Emma Carter had always believed that life-changing moments announced themselves with fanfare, dramatic music, a sudden shift in the air, maybe even a beam of celestial light breaking through the clouds. So when the most significant moment of her 28 years arrived on a drizzly Tuesday morning, while she stood in line at a Brooklyn bodega, clutching a slightly stale everything bagel and a coffee that was 90% cream, she felt cosmically cheated by the lack of ceremony. "Next!" and debarked Tony, the bodega owner who'd been serving her breakfast for the past 3 years, and still couldn't remember that she preferred her coffee hot, not lukewarm. Emma stepped forward, fishing in her purse for her wallet. Her fingers brushed against something crinkled, the lottery ticket she'd bought last week on a whim. She'd been having one of those days where Daniel Hartwell, her boss and the CEO of Hartwell Innovations, had scheduled 14 back-to-back meetings without factoring in basic human needs like eating or breathing, and she'd needed something, anything, to feel like she had control over her own destiny. $5.30, Tony said, already looking past her to the next customer. "Wait, can you check this?" Emma slid the lottery ticket across the counter. Tony picked it up with the enthusiasm of a man who'd checked 10,000 losing tickets in his lifetime, then fed it into the scanner. The machine beeped, then beeped again, then started making a sound Emma had never heard before, a triumphant digital melody that seemed wildly out of place in a bodega that smelled like old cheese and Lysol. Tony's face went pale. He looked at the screen, looked at Emma, looked at the screen again. "You need to call the lottery office," he said, his voice strangled. "Right now." "Is it $50? 100? Emma laughed nervously. "Because honestly, at this point I'd be happy with $38 million. The words hung in the air between them like a glitch in reality. Emma's bagel slipped from her fingers and landed cream cheese side down on the floor. She didn't notice. "That's not funny, Tony." "Lady, I don't joke about money." He turned the scanner screen toward her. Emma stared at the numbers. Her numbers, matching perfectly with the winning combination displayed on the screen. $38 million. Not 38,000. Not 3,800. 38 million. The bodega tilted slightly. Or maybe that was just her perception of the universe fundamentally shifting. "I need to sit down," Emma whispered. "You need to sign the back of that ticket," Tony said, suddenly very invested in her well-being. "Right now, with a pen. Do you have a pen? Here, use mine. Sign it. Sign it immediately." Emma's hands shook as she scrawled her signature across the back of the ticket. Her handwriting looked drunk. "What do I do now?" Tony pulled out his phone and started Googling. "Says here you need to contact a lawyer before you contact the lottery office, and a financial advisor, and you should probably take a photo of the ticket. Actually, take several photos, and put it somewhere safe, like a safe. Do you have a safe?" "I have a shoebox under my bed where I keep my passport. That'll have to do for now." Tony looked at her with something approaching respect for the first time in 3 years. "You still want the coffee?" Emma looked down at the cup in her hand, then at the fallen bagel on the floor, then back at Tony. The absurdity of the situation hit her all at once, and she started laughing, a slightly hysterical sound that made the other customers edge away from her. "You know what? Yes, I still want the coffee, because apparently I'm a millionaire now and I still can't afford to be late for work." The subway ride to Manhattan felt surreal. Emma sat wedged between a man eating pad thai at 8:30 in the morning and a woman whose enormous tote bag kept jabbing her in the ribs, and all she could think was, "I never have to take the subway again." Except she did, because she was going to work at her job, where she made $65,000 a year and considered herself lucky to have it. The rational part of her brain, the part that had gotten her through college on scholarships and kept her employed in one of Manhattan's most demanding corporate environments, knew she should quit. Today, this morning, walk into Daniel Hartwell's pristine corner office with its floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking Central Park and hand in her resignation with a smile. But Emma had never been good at doing the rational thing when emotions were involved, and her feelings about Daniel Hartwell were complicated enough to require a flowchart, a therapist, and possibly an exorcism. She'd been his executive secretary for 3 years, 2 months, and 16 days. Not that she was counting. In that time, she'd learned that he took his coffee black, hated speakerphone, and could reduce grown men to tears with nothing but a raised eyebrow and a pointed silence. She'd also learned that he stayed at the office until 9 or 10 most nights, that he had a younger sister he called every Sunday, and that when he was deep in thought, he had a habit of running his hand through his dark hair until it stood up in a way that made him look less like a corporate titan and more like an exhausted graduate student. She'd learned, in other words, enough to develop what she privately referred to as the inconvenient attraction, the one she'd been steadfastly ignoring for approximately 2 years, 11 months, and 29 days, because Emma Carter didn't do workplace romances. She'd watched too many colleagues flame out spectacularly, seen too many talented women get branded as that girl who dated the VP, witnessed too much drama that could have been avoided if people just kept their professional and personal lives separate. Besides, Daniel barely looked at her as a person. She was a tool, an extremely efficient, perfectly organized tool, but a tool nonetheless. He said, "Please" and "thank you," never yelled, always respected her boundaries, and treated her with the exact same courteous distance he'd show any competent employee. Which was fine. It was professional. It was appropriate. It also made her want to scream sometimes. The subway screeched to a halt at her stop. Emma stood, gripping the lottery ticket in her purse like a talisman, and made her way through the morning crowd toward the gleaming tower that housed Hartwell Innovations. She had a plan forming, a ridiculous, probably stupid, definitely inadvisable plan. She wasn't going to quit, not yet. Instead, she was going to conduct an experiment. She was going to find out if Daniel Hartwell saw her as anything more than the woman who organized his life. She was going to discover whether those occasional moments, the times when his hand brushed hers passing documents, the late nights when they'd shared takeout and actually talked about something other than quarterly projections, the morning he'd brought her coffee after she'd stayed until midnight fixing a presentation crisis, meant anything at all. And she was going to do it while secretly being a multi-millionaire. The absurdity of it made her laugh again as she stepped into the polished lobby. The security guard, Marcus, gave her a concerned look. "You okay, Ms. Carter?" "Never better, Marcus." She breezed past him toward the elevators, feeling reckless and alive in a way she hadn't felt since she'd moved to New York 5 years ago with $800 and a dream that had long since been buried under student loans and reality. The elevator carried her up to the 42nd floor, where Hartwell Innovations occupied a sprawling space of glass, chrome, and the kind of minimalist design that cost a fortune to look that simple. Emma's desk sat just outside Daniel's office, a strategic position that made her the gatekeeper to one of the tech industry's most sought-after CEOs. She was settling into her chair, booting up her computer, and trying to act like a normal person whose life hadn't just been completely upended when Daniel's door opened. He stepped out, and Emma's treacherous heart did its usual skip and flutter routine. At 34, Daniel Hartwell had the kind of looks that would have made him successful even if he hadn't been brilliant, tall, lean, with dark hair that was perpetually slightly too long and grey eyes that missed nothing. This morning he wore a charcoal suit that probably cost more than Emma's monthly rent, and a dark blue tie that matched his eyes in a way that seemed deliberately unfair. "Emma," he glanced at his watch, a vintage Rolex that had belonged to his father. "You're 7 minutes late." She was never late. In 3 years, 2 months, and 16 days, she had never once been late. "I apologize," she said smoothly, logging into her computer. "Subway delay." He studied her for a moment, and she had the uncomfortable feeling that those grey eyes could see right through to the lottery ticket burning a hole in her purse. But he just nodded. "I need you to clear my schedule for Thursday afternoon. The board is insisting on this ridiculous team-building exercise at some charity event, and apparently my presence is non-negotiable." His tone made it clear exactly what he thought of team-building exercises. "Consider it done." Emma pulled up his calendar, already rearranging meetings with the efficiency of a Tetris champion. Which charity? Something about urban gardens and underprivileged youth. Jennifer from PR sent over the details. He paused, then added, "Actually, you should come too." Emma's fingers froze over her keyboard. "I'm sorry? The board thinks I'm too—" He waved a hand vaguely. "Disconnected, robotic. They want me to appear more relatable. You're good at that sort of thing, making me seem human." It was possibly the most backhanded compliment Emma had ever received, and coming from anyone else, she would have been offended. But from Daniel, it was practically effusive praise. "I manage your schedule, Mr. Hartwell. I'm not sure I'm qualified to manage your public image." "You've been managing my public image for 3 years, he countered. "You're the one who reminds me to ask about people's families. You're the one who tells me when I'm being too blunt in emails. You're the one who—" He stopped, something shifting in his expression. "You know what? Forget it." It was an inappropriate request. He started to turn back toward his office, and Emma felt something crack open inside her chest. Here was her chance. A ridiculous, inadvisable chance to spend time with Daniel Hartwell outside the confines of their professional relationship, to see if there was anything beneath the surface of their carefully maintained roles. She was a millionaire now. She could afford to take risks. "I'll do it," she heard herself say. Daniel turned back, one eyebrow raised. "You're sure? Completely sure?" She smiled, and it felt dangerous. "After all, making you seem human is apparently my specialty." Was that a flicker of humor in his eyes? It was gone too quickly to tell. "Thursday at 2 then, where something casual. Apparently we're going to be doing actual gardening." He said the word like it was foreign to him. "Noted." He studied her for another moment, and Emma fought the urge to check if she had cream cheese on her face, or if her expression somehow screamed, "I'm secretly rich now." "You seem different this morning," Daniel said finally. Emma's heart hammered. "Different how?" "I'm not sure." He tilted his head slightly, considering. "Lighter, maybe." "You have no idea," Emma thought. Out loud, she said, "Maybe it's just a good hair day." "Maybe." But he didn't sound convinced. He retreated into his office, and Emma released a breath she hadn't known she was holding. Her phone buzzed, a text from her best friend and roommate, Sophie. "Sophie, dinner tonight? I need to vent about my disaster of a date." Emma stared at the message, thinking about the lottery ticket in her purse and the fact that her entire life had just shifted on its axis. "Emma, definitely. I might have something to vent about, too." "Sophie, you never have drama." "Did Daniel finally notice you exist?" "Emma, something like that." She set her phone down and pulled up Daniel's calendar, looking at Thursday's blocked-off time. 2 hours at an urban garden charity event. 2 hours to figure out if she was completely delusional about the occasional spark she felt between them, or if there was actually something there worth exploring. 2 hours before she told anyone, even Sophie, about the $38 million that was going to change everything whether she wanted it to or not. Emma opened a new browser tab and searched for "what to wear to gardening charity event," then immediately closed it and searched for "how to tell if your boss likes you." The results were depressingly unhelpful. Outside Daniel's office, the Tuesday morning stretched ahead of her. Meetings to schedule, emails to screen, calls to route, all the mundane tasks that had made up her existence for 3 years. Except now, knowing she could walk away at any moment, made every interaction feel strangely precious. She was still Emma Carter, executive secretary, but she was also now Emma Carter, secret millionaire conducting a ridiculous romantic experiment. It was possibly the stupidest thing she'd ever done. She couldn't wait to see what happened next. Emma had owned exactly 3 pairs of jeans in her adult life, and all of them were currently mocking her from her bed. "This is ridiculous," she muttered, holding up a pair of dark wash skinny jeans that she'd bought 2 years ago and worn maybe 5 times. "They're jeans. He's seen jeans before. He probably owns jeans." "Does he, though?" Sophie appeared in the doorway, eating cereal directly from the box. "I'm not convinced Daniel Hartwell owns casual clothing. I think he emerged from the womb wearing a suit." Emma threw a pillow at her. Sophie dodged it easily, grinning. It was Thursday morning, and Emma had been awake since 5, trying to figure out what casual but professional for a charity gardening event actually meant. Her normal work wardrobe consisted of tailored dresses, blazers, and heels that made her feel competent and invisible in equal measure. She'd never had to dress casually around Daniel before, and the intimacy of it felt strange, like he was going to see her rather than just his secretary. "The dark jeans with the white blouse," Sophie decided, settling onto Emma's bed and nearly sitting on the rejected candidates. "Casual enough for gardening, nice enough that you don't look like you rolled out of bed. And those brown ankle boots, the ones that make your legs look amazing." "This isn't about my legs looking amazing." "Everything is about legs looking amazing," Sophie crunched thoughtfully. "So, are you going to tell me what's been going on with you this week? You've been acting weird since Tuesday." Happy weird, which is somehow more concerning than regular weird. Emma's hand instinctively moved to her purse, where the lottery ticket now resided in a waterproof plastic sleeve, tucked into a hidden zipper pocket. She'd barely slept in 3 days, her mind spinning with possibilities and plans. She'd called a lawyer, a discreet one recommended by an online forum for lottery winners, which was apparently a thing that existed. She'd set up a meeting with a financial advisor for next week. She'd researched anonymous trusts and tax implications until her eyes crossed. But she hadn't told Sophie, hadn't told anyone. The secret sat in her chest like a living thing, growing heavier every day. Sophie was her best friend, her roommate since college, the person who'd held her hair back during food poisoning and talked her through every quarter-life crisis. Emma hated keeping secrets from her, but something held her back. Maybe it was the fear that telling someone would make it real, would force her to make decisions she wasn't ready for. Maybe it was the superstitious worry that speaking it aloud would somehow make it disappear, like waking up from a dream. Or maybe it was the fact that she'd started this bizarre experiment with Daniel, and she wanted to see it through before everything changed irrevocably. "Just work stuff," Emma said, pulling on the dark jeans. They fit perfectly, which seemed unfair given how little she'd paid for them. "Daniel's been acting slightly less robotic lately. It's unsettling." "Unsettling how? Like murder robot unsettling, or possibly developing human emotions unsettling?" "The second one." Emma buttoned the white blouse, checked her reflection, and tried to see herself through Daniel's eyes. Would he notice the effort? Would he care? "Emma?" Sophie set down her cereal box, her expression turning serious. "I know you have this whole I don't do workplace romances rule, but you've been in love with Daniel Hartwell for at least 2 years. Maybe it's time to actually do something about it. I'm not in love with him." The lie tasted stale even as she said it. "I just appreciate his intelligence and his work ethic and possibly his forearms, but that's purely aesthetic admiration." "Right. And I just aesthetically admire Chris Evans's entire existence." Sophie stood, brushing cereal crumbs off her pajama pants. "Look, I'm just saying, life's short. If there's even a chance he feels the same way, wouldn't you rather know?" "That's exactly what I'm trying to figure out," Emma thought. Out loud, she said, "We're going to a charity event, not a romantic getaway. I'll be lucky if he says more than 10 words to me that aren't about his schedule." But even as she said it, she remembered the way he'd looked at her on Tuesday, that moment when he'd said she seemed different, lighter, like he'd actually seen her, not just the efficient machine that kept his life running smoothly. Sophie gave her a knowing look, but didn't push further. "Well, whatever happens, try to have fun, and text me if anything interesting develops. I'll be living vicariously through you, since my love life is currently a barren wasteland, populated entirely by men who think Netflix and chill is the height of romance." Emma laughed, grabbed her purse, heavy with its secret cargo, and headed out into a morning that felt charged with possibility. The urban garden was tucked into a lot in the Lower East Side, a surprising patch of green surrounded by brick buildings and fire escapes. Emma arrived 10 minutes early, a habit ingrained by 3 years of always being available before Daniel needed her, and found the space already bustling with volunteers. Raised beds overflowed with vegetables and herbs. A group of teenagers were hauling bags of soil. Someone had set up a table with lemonade and cookies. The whole scene had a cheerful, community-focused energy that felt worlds away from the sleek corporate environment Emma inhabited daily. "You must be Emma!" A woman in her 50s, with dirt-stained overalls and an infectious smile, approached her. "Jennifer from PR sent over your names. I'm Patricia. I run this place. We're so excited to have Hartwell Innovations volunteering today." Happy to be here," Emma said, meaning it more than she'd expected. There was something appealing about the thought of getting her hands dirty, of doing work that had visible, immediate results, instead of existing in the abstract world of emails and spreadsheets. "Your boss isn't here yet?" Patricia glanced around. "He should be arriving any—" "Sorry I'm late." Emma turned, and her brain briefly short-circuited. Daniel Hartwell stood at the garden entrance wearing jeans. Actual jeans, dark blue, slightly worn, paired with a plain grey t-shirt that did absolutely criminal things to his shoulders. His hair was messier than usual, like he'd forgotten to style it, and he wore sunglasses that made him look less like a CEO and more like a normal person who might actually know how to relax. It was unfair, deeply, cosmically unfair. "Mr. Hartwell." Patricia's smile widened. "Welcome, we're thrilled to have you, and please call me Patricia. No formality needed here." "Daniel," he said, shaking her hand. Then his eyes found Emma, and something flickered across his face. Surprise, maybe, or appreciation. "Emma, you look different." "So do you." The words came out before she could stop them, and heat flooded her cheeks. "I mean casual. You look casual, which is appropriate for gardening." "Smooth, Emma. Very smooth." But Daniel's mouth curved into something that might have been the ghost of a smile. "I wasn't sure I still owned jeans. I had to dig through my closet for 20 minutes. The image of Daniel Hartwell digging through his closet, potentially flustered, was so unexpectedly humanizing that Emma had to look away before she said something truly stupid. Patricia, oblivious to the tension crackling between them, launched into an enthusiastic explanation of the garden's mission. Providing fresh vegetables to local food banks, teaching kids about sustainable agriculture, creating community green spaces in underserved neighborhoods. Daniel listened with what appeared to be genuine interest, asking questions that suggested he'd actually read the information Jennifer had sent over. "So today," Patricia concluded, "we're building 2 new raised beds and planting tomatoes, peppers and herbs. I'll pair you 2 up, is that all right?" "Perfect," Emma said. At the same time, Daniel said, "Fine." They glanced at each other. Daniel's expression was unreadable behind his sunglasses. Patricia handed them work gloves and led them to a corner of the garden where lumber and tools were laid out. "Everything you need is here. Instructions are on the clipboard. The teenagers can help if you get stuck, though I have a feeling you're both capable of following directions." She winked and bustled off to organize other volunteers. Emma picked up the clipboard, scanning the instructions. "Looks straightforward. We just need to assemble the frame, level it, add landscape fabric, and fill it with soil." "I haven't built anything since high school shop class," Daniel admitted, picking up a drill with the careful uncertainty of someone who spent more time with spreadsheets than power tools. "Well, I haven't either, so we'll figure it out together." Emma pulled on her work gloves, feeling oddly excited by the challenge. How bad could it possibly be? 45 minutes later, they had their answer. Pretty bad. The frame was assembled, but it listed noticeably to the left. The landscape fabric had somehow torn in 3 places. They'd dropped the level twice, and Emma was fairly certain they'd used at least 6 screws more than the instructions called for. "This is humbling," Daniel said, staring at their crooked creation. Emma started laughing. She couldn't help it. The sight of Daniel Hartwell, CEO and tech industry wunderkind, looking genuinely baffled by a simple wooden frame was too absurd. "We're terrible at this. Catastrophically terrible." But he was smiling now, a real smile that transformed his usually serious face into something warmer, younger. "In my defense, I built a software company from nothing. You'd think that would translate to basic carpentry skills. Different skill sets." Emma grabbed the level again. "Okay, new strategy. You hold this end up while I check if we can salvage this disaster." Daniel moved to his end of the frame, and Emma crouched down with the level. She was acutely aware of him watching her, of the fact that they were closer than they'd ever been outside the office, of the way his t-shirt had ridden up slightly when he'd lifted the frame, revealing a strip of tanned skin that her brain unhelpfully catalogued for future reference. "A little higher," she instructed. "No, too high. Down about an inch. There, hold it." Bidam, he held it, arms straining slightly with the effort, and Emma made an adjustment to one of the legs. Her hair had fallen out of its ponytail, and she brushed it back with a dirt-smudged glove, leaving what she suspected was a streak of soil across her cheek. "Got it," she said, sitting back on her heels. "Try it now." Daniel set the frame down carefully. They both checked the level. "It's still crooked," they said in unison. Emma looked at Daniel. Daniel looked at Emma. And then they were both laughing, the kind of helpless, genuine laughter that Emma hadn't experienced at work in years, maybe ever. "We're going to get fired from volunteering," Emma managed between giggles. "Is that possible? Can you get fired from charity work?" "I think we're about to find out." A shadow fell over them. They looked up to find Patricia standing there with 3 teenagers in tow, all of whom were trying very hard not to laugh. "Having some trouble?" Patricia's tone was kind but amused. "We may have overestimated our construction abilities," Daniel admitted. "No shame in that. Miguel, can you and the crew help these 2 out?" Miguel, a lanky kid of about 16 with paint-stained jeans and an easy grin, nodded. "No problem. We built like 8 of these last month." What followed was a humbling but oddly delightful lesson in basic carpentry from 3 teenagers who clearly found the sight of 2 adults struggling with simple tools endlessly entertaining. Miguel was patient and funny, explaining what they'd done wrong, while his friends, Jasmine and Devon, rebuilt the frame with efficient ease. "See, the trick is to make sure your corners are actually square before you screw them in," Miguel explained, demonstrating with the casual competence of someone who actually knew what he was doing. "Otherwise, everything just snowballs into chaos." "Bien, that's good life advice," Emma said. "Deep." Jasmine grinned. "You should put that on a motivational poster." Daniel, to Emma's surprise, seemed completely at ease with the teenagers. He asked them about school, about the garden, about their plans for the future. Devon wanted to study environmental science. Jasmine was interested in architecture. Miguel was heading to community college, but wasn't sure what he wanted to major in yet. "You don't have to have it all figured out at 18, Daniel said, holding a board steady while Miguel secured it. "I changed my major 3 times in college. Ended up studying something completely different from what I'm doing now." Emma blinked. In 3 years, she'd never heard Daniel talk about his past with this kind of casual openness. She'd pieced together basic facts from overheard phone calls and the occasional mention, but hearing him share personal details, even small ones, felt like glimpsing someone she'd never met before. "What'd you study?" Devon asked. "Philosophy initially, then economics. Finally settled on computer science, but by then I was already building my first company in my dorm room." That's crazy, Jasmine said admiringly. You just, decided to start a business. My roommate and I were frustrated with existing project management software. We figured we could build something better. Daniel's expression softened with memory. We had no idea what we were doing. Survived on ramen and coffee for 2 years, nearly went bankrupt 4 times. Emma stared at him, fascinated. She'd known the basic origin story of Hartwell Innovations. It was tech industry legend, but hearing Daniel talk about it like this, with self-deprecating humor and genuine fondness, was completely different from reading it in a business profile. "But you made it work," Miguel said, finishing the last screw with a flourish. "There, that's how it's supposed to look." The frame was perfect, level, square, solid. A stark contrast to their earlier disaster. "You've humbled us thoroughly," Daniel said. "Thank you." "No problem. You guys can handle the soil and planting, though, right?" Devon looked skeptical. "We'll manage," Emma assured him. Probably. The teenagers wandered off to help other volunteers, leaving Emma and Daniel alone with their now professional-looking raised bed. They worked in comfortable silence for a while, spreading landscape fabric and filling the frame with rich, dark soil. It was physical work, and Emma found herself unexpectedly enjoying it, the simplicity of it, the way her muscles engaged, the smell of earth and growing things. "I didn't know you studied philosophy," she said as they emptied the 4th bag of soil. Daniel paused, shovel in hand. "It's not something that comes up in board meetings." "No, I suppose not." Emma smoothed the soil level. "Do you ever miss it? Philosophy?" "Sometimes." He was quiet for a moment, and Emma thought he might not elaborate. But then he continued. "There's something appealing about questions that don't have definitive answers. In business, you make decisions based on data, projections, calculated risks. But philosophy is all about sitting with uncertainty, examining assumptions, accepting that some things can't be quantified or solved." Emma looked at him, surprised by the almost wistful tone in his voice. "That sounds nice, actually. Peaceful." It was. "Until I realized I needed to eat and pay rent, and philosophy degrees aren't exactly lucrative." He smiled slightly. "Practical considerations won out. Do you ever regret it? The practical choice?" Daniel met her eyes, and something passed between them. An unexpected intimacy born of dirt-smudged clothes and honest conversation. "Sometimes, don't you?" The question caught Emma off guard. "I don't know what you mean." "You're brilliant at what you do, Emma. You could run your own company if you wanted to. But you've been my secretary for 3 years. Don't you ever wonder what else you could be doing?" The $38 million in her bank account suddenly felt very heavy. "Yes," she wanted to say. "I wonder constantly. And now I have the means to do anything I want, and I'm terrified because I don't actually know what that is." Instead, she said, "I like what I do. It's challenging. And I'm good at it." "You're exceptional at it." Daniel held her gaze. "But that doesn't really answer my question." Emma's heart was doing complicated things in her chest. This felt dangerous, this level of honesty, this glimpse past their professional facades. She wasn't sure if she wanted to step back to safer ground or leap forward into whatever this was becoming. "Maybe we should plant the tomatoes," she said finally. Daniel studied her for a moment longer, then nodded. "Tomatoes it is." They planted in silence for a while. 6 tomato plants, 3 pepper plants, and an assortment of herbs. The teenagers had left them detailed instructions and enthusiasm. Emma found the work meditative, the simple act of settling plants into soil and patting the earth gently around their roots. "Can I ask you something?" Daniel said as they planted the last basil. "Of course. That morning this week, Tuesday, when you were late." He glanced at her. "Something happened, didn't it?" Emma's hands stilled in the dirt. "What makes you think that?" "You were different." "You still are. Lighter, like I said. But also, I don't know. More present, maybe. Like you're seeing things clearly for the first time." It was so accurate that Emma felt exposed, like he'd reached into her chest and read her thoughts directly. "Maybe I am," she said carefully. "Seeing things clearly, I mean." "And what do you see?" You, Emma wanted to say. I see you, not just my boss, but a person. Someone who studied philosophy and survived on ramen and talks to teenagers like they matter. Someone who might, possibly, see me too. But that felt like too much truth for a Thursday afternoon in a community garden. I see a raised bed we built, she said instead, gesturing to their completed project. Or more accurately, that we supervised while talented teenagers built. I see tomatoes that will probably grow into actual tomatoes, which feels vaguely miraculous. And I see two people covered in dirt who should probably find that lemonade. Daniel smiled. That same warm, genuine smile from earlier. Practical considerations winning out again? Always. But Emma smiled back, and the moment felt charged with everything they weren't saying. They washed their hands at the outdoor sink, then accepted lemonade from Patricia, who praised their work enthusiastically despite having witnessed their initial catastrophic failure. Other volunteers were wrapping up their projects. The garden was transformed, new beds built, plants settled, the whole space humming with accomplished energy. Thank you both for coming, Patricia said, pressing business cards into their hands. We do volunteer days every month if you'd like to come back. I'd like that, Emma said, surprising herself. Daniel glanced at her. We'll check our schedules. They left together, walking toward the subway station in the late afternoon sun. Emma was hyper-aware of him beside her, the way he moved, the lingering scent of soil and sun on his skin, the fact that they weren't at work and weren't talking about work, and it felt both strange and natural. Can I ask you something now? Emma said as they reached the station entrance. Fair's fair. Why did you really want me to come today? The truth. Daniel stopped, and Emma stopped with him. People flowed around them like water around stones, the endless churn of New York life continuing while they stood still. Because the board is right, he said finally. I am disconnected. I've spent so long focused on building the company that I've forgotten how to be human. And you, he paused, seeming to search for words. You make it easier to remember to be. Emma's breath caught. Oh, that was probably inappropriate to say. No, the word came out fierce. No, it wasn't. They stood there, suspended in possibility, and Emma felt the weight of her secret pressing against her ribs. She should tell him. About the money, about her plan, about the fact that she'd been testing him because she needed to know if he saw her as more than just his secretary. But then Daniel's phone buzzed. He glanced at it, and Emma saw his expression shift back into CEO mode. The walls going up. The vulnerability tucking itself away. I need to take this, he said apologetically. Board member, of course. Emma smiled, ignoring the disappointment blooming in her chest. I'll see you tomorrow? Tomorrow. He answered the call, already stepping away, already halfway back to being the untouchable executive she managed every day. Emma watched him go, then descended into the subway station alone. Her jeans were dirty, her white blouse had a soil stain near the hem. Her hands smelled like herbs, and her heart felt like it had been cracked open and sunlight poured inside. She pulled out her phone and texted Sophie. Emma. Interesting things definitely developed. Sophie. Details immediately. Emma. Tonight. Wine required. She settled into a subway seat, feeling the lottery ticket in her purse and Daniel's words echoing in her mind. You make it easier. To remember. To be. Emma smiled to herself as the train pulled away from the station. Her experiment was working. The question was, what was she going to do about it? Let me get this straight. Sophie poured herself a third glass of wine and pointed it at Emma like a weapon. You won $38 million. $38 million? And you didn't tell me for 5 days? Emma winced. She'd finally broken down and told Sophie everything. The lottery ticket, the lawyer, the financial advisor meeting scheduled for Monday, and most importantly, her insane plan to keep working for Daniel while being secretly wealthy. I know, I'm sorry, and you're using your secret millionaire status to what exactly? Test whether your hot boss has feelings for you? Sophie's voice had risen to a pitch that probably violated their lease agreement. Emma, this is—" She gestured wildly, wine sloshing dangerously close to the rim of her glass. "This is rom-com protagonist behavior. This is the kind of thing that leads to dramatic third-act misunderstandings. I know it sounds crazy. It doesn't sound crazy. It is crazy." But Sophie was grinning now, her initial shock giving way to delighted disbelief. "You've been his secretary for 3 years without making a move, and suddenly you win the lottery and decide now is the time for romantic espionage? It's not espionage. It's just research. You're emotionally catfishing your own boss. That's not—" Emma stopped. "Okay, maybe a little bit. But Sophie, he said I make it easier for him to be human. He opened up about his past. He smiled, really smiled, and he looked at me like he actually saw me, not just his secretary. Don't you think that means something?" Sophie's expression softened. She set down her wine glass and pulled Emma into a hug. "Honey, I think it means you're both idiots who have been dancing around each other for years and finally had a moment of honesty. But I also think keeping this secret is going to blow up in your face spectacularly." "Maybe," Emma pulled back. "But I need to know. If I quit tomorrow and he never sees me again, I'll always wonder. And if I tell him about the money first, everything changes. He'll treat me differently, or he'll think I'm only interested in him now because I have options, or he'll be hurt that you didn't trust him enough to tell him the truth." The words hit Emma like cold water. She hadn't thought about it that way, hadn't considered that her deception, even with good intentions, might be exactly the kind of thing that would damage whatever fragile connection they were building. "What do I do?" Emma asked, feeling suddenly exhausted. "Honestly, I have no idea." Sophie picked up her wine again. "But I do know this. You can't keep this up forever. Eventually, you're going to have to choose. Tell him everything and risk losing him, or walk away and always wonder what if. There's no scenario where you get to keep all your secrets and get the guy." Emma knew Sophie was right. But the thought of making that choice, of potentially losing whatever was developing between her and Daniel, made her chest tight with anxiety. "How much time do you think I have?" Emma asked. "Before what? Before the universe punishes you for your romantic deception, or before Daniel figures out something's up?" "Either. Both." Sophie considered this, swirling her wine thoughtfully. "Based on what you've told me about today, I'd say you have maybe 2 weeks before he realizes you're acting weird. Daniel's not stupid. He's already noticed you're different. And men like him, the ones who notice everything about their business but miss emotional cues in their personal life, they're like emotional time bombs. They'll be oblivious until suddenly they're not, and then all the pieces click into place at once. So 2 weeks to figure out if what I'm feeling is real and if he feels it too. 2 weeks to decide if you're brave enough to risk everything for a chance at something real," Sophie corrected. "There's a difference." Before Emma could respond, her phone buzzed. She picked it up and felt her heart jump. "Daniel, thank you for today. I haven't enjoyed volunteering since college. We should do it again." Sophie leaned over to read the message and raised her eyebrows meaningfully. "He's texting you at 9 p.m. on a Thursday about non-work things. Emma, this man is into you. It could just be friendly. When has Daniel Hartwell ever been just friendly about anything?" Sophie grabbed Emma's phone. "What are you going to say?" Emma took the phone back, her thumb hovering over the keyboard. This was the moment. She could keep things professional, shut down whatever was developing, protect herself from potential heartbreak. Or she could lean into it, take the risk, see where this led. She thought about Daniel in his jeans and grey t-shirt, dirt under his fingernails, smiling at teenagers while they taught him carpentry. She thought about the way he'd looked at her when he asked if she ever regretted her practical choices, like he genuinely cared about her answer, like her thoughts mattered beyond their utility to his schedule. "Emma, I enjoyed it too. Patricia gave me her card. Apparently they plant flowers in May. Fair warning, I'm equally terrible at floriculture. The response came quickly. Daniel, then we'll be terrible together. I'll have Jennifer add it to our calendars. Sophie squealed. He said our calendars. Emma, our calendars. That's couple language. It's shared calendar language. We share calendars professionally. You're impossible. But Sophie was beaming. So what now? Are you going to work tomorrow and pretend everything's normal? What else can I do? You could quit. Use your millions to travel the world. Find yourself, live your best life without the complication of your boss/maybe crush. The suggestion should have been appealing. A week ago, Emma would have considered it. Or at least, she would have before the lottery. Now, with $38 million in the bank, the world was literally open to her. She could go anywhere, do anything, be anyone. But the thought of leaving Daniel, of never knowing what might have developed between them, felt like losing something precious before she'd even had a chance to hold it. I can't quit yet, Emma said firmly. Not until I know. Sophie studied her for a long moment. You're really falling for him, aren't you? Not just the fantasy of him, but the actual person. Emma thought about it, about the Daniel she'd known for 3 years and the Daniel she'd glimpsed today. The CEO who could reduce executives to tears and the man who'd admitted he missed philosophy. The demanding boss who expected perfection and the person who'd patiently listened to teenagers talk about their dreams. Yeah, she admitted. I think I am. Then I'm with you. Sophie raised her glass, to terrible romantic decisions and the chaos they inevitably create. Emma clinked her glass against Sophie's, to chaos. Friday morning arrived with unseasonable warmth and a calendar that made Emma want to cry. Daniel had 7 meetings scheduled back-to-back, a conference call with investors at 2, and a product launch strategy session that would likely run until 7 or 8 in the evening. In other words, a completely normal day. Emma arrived at the office at 7:30, earlier than usual, and found Daniel already at his desk. He looked up when she entered, and something in his expression made her stomach flip. You're here early, he said. So are you. Couldn't sleep. He leaned back in his chair, and Emma noticed the shadows under his eyes. Spent the night thinking about the Riverside acquisition. The numbers don't add up the way I want them to. This was familiar territory. Daniel obsessing over deals, running scenarios until he'd examined every angle. Emma had spent countless late nights going over projections with him, ordering takeout, watching him pace while he talked through problems aloud. Want to talk it through? She offered, settling into the chair across from his desk. You don't have to. It's not even 8 yet. I know I don't have to. Emma pulled out her tablet. But I'm here, you're here, and we have 45 minutes before your first meeting. Walk me through what's bothering you. Something shifted in Daniel's expression. Gratitude, maybe, or relief. The initial valuation seems solid, but their user retention numbers are declining. Not dramatically, but consistently. Riverside's team claims it's seasonal variation, but the pattern suggests something systemic. For the next 40 minutes, they dissected the acquisition from every angle. Emma asked questions, challenged assumptions, played devil's advocate. It was the kind of conversation they'd had dozens of times before, but something felt different now. There was an ease to it, a comfort that hadn't existed earlier in the week. You're right, Daniel said finally, making a note. We need to dig deeper into their user experience data before moving forward. I'll have the team. He stopped, studying Emma. How do you do that? Do what? See through the noise. You don't have a background in tech or business development, but you always know exactly which questions to ask. Emma felt heat creep up her neck. I pay attention, and I've spent 3 years learning how you think. It's more than that. Daniel's grey eyes were intense. You have good instincts, strategic thinking. You could be doing this yourself, running your own deals, building your own company. Have you ever thought about it? The question felt dangerous, coming so close to her own secret deliberations about what to do with her newfound wealth. Sometimes, Emma admitted carefully. but I'm not sure what I'd want to build, or if I even want to be in charge. There's something appealing about being the person who makes things run smoothly rather than the person everyone's looking to for answers. That's a cop-out. Emma blinked. Excuse me? You're afraid of failing? Daniel said it matter-of-factly, without judgment. So you've positioned yourself in a role where you're essential but not responsible, where you can be brilliant without risking everything. The words stung because they were true. Emma had always taken the safe path, scholarships to a good but not great college, a stable job instead of a risky startup, the role of supporter rather than leader. Even now, with millions in the bank, she was keeping her job instead of taking a leap. That's not fair, she said, but her voice lacked conviction. Isn't it? Daniel stood, moving to the window that overlooked the city. I'm not criticizing. I'm just saying I recognize it because I used to do the same thing. Back in college, I had all these ideas, but I was terrified to actually build anything. It wasn't until my roommate literally shoved me into pitching our first investor that I realized the only thing holding me back was me. Emma joined him at the window. Below them, New York hummed with morning energy. People rushing to work, living their lives, taking their own leaps or playing it safe. What changed? She asked. How did you get past the fear? I didn't. Daniel glanced at her. I'm still afraid. Every new product launch, every acquisition, every board meeting, there's always this voice saying I'm going to fail, that everyone's going to realize I don't actually know what I'm doing. But I do it anyway because the fear of staying still is worse than the fear of moving forward. It was possibly the most personal thing Daniel had ever shared with her, and Emma felt the weight of it, the trust implicit in his honesty, the vulnerability he was showing by admitting his doubts. What about you? Daniel asked. What would you do if fear wasn't a factor? If you could build anything, be anything? Emma's mind immediately went to the money, to all the possibilities it represented. She could start a foundation, travel the world, write a book, learn to paint, open a bookstore, go back to school, invest in startups, do absolutely nothing for a year while she figured it out. But what she heard herself say was, I think I'd want to help people figure out what they want to build. Not the tech side necessarily, but the human side, helping companies understand their people, create better cultures, build something sustainable and meaningful instead of just profitable. Daniel turned to face her fully. That's brilliant. Have you ever considered organizational psychology or consulting? Not seriously. It feels like such a leap from being a secretary. Executive assistant, Daniel corrected. And it's not that much of a leap. You already do it. You keep my chaos organized. You manage personalities in the office. You know how to navigate politics and keep everyone happy. That's exactly the skill set you're describing. Emma's heart was pounding. This conversation felt like standing on the edge of something vast and terrifying. Are you suggesting I quit? She asked, trying to keep her tone light. No. The word came quickly, almost defensively. No, I'm saying you're capable of more than you give yourself credit for. And selfishly, I'd hate to lose you. You make my life possible. The words hung between them, loaded with meaning Emma wasn't sure how to interpret. Before she could respond, her desk phone rang, the reminder alarm for Daniel's 8:15 meeting. The moment broke. Daniel stepped back, sliding into CEO mode like putting on armor. I should prepare. Can you bring me the Riverside files? Of course. Emma moved toward the door, then paused. Daniel. Yes? Thank you for saying that, about me being capable. His expression softened. I only said what's true. Emma returned to her desk, her mind spinning. The conversation had shifted something fundamental between them, had cracked open doors that had been firmly shut for 3 years. She should have felt excited, validated, hopeful. Instead, she felt guilty, because Daniel had been honest with her, had shared his fears and doubts, and seen something in her worth encouraging. And she was lying to him. Every moment she didn't mention the lottery ticket was a moment of deception, building a foundation of dishonesty under whatever they were becoming. Her phone buzzed with a text from her lawyer. Marcus Chen, meeting confirmed for Monday at 10 a.m. Bring the ticket, 2 forms of ID, and any questions you have about trust structures. Looking forward to helping you navigate this. Emma stared at the message. By Monday afternoon, the money would be real in a way it hadn't been before. She'd have to make decisions, sign papers, start the process of claiming her winnings. She'd have to decide what kind of person she wanted to be, the one who kept secrets or the one who took risks. Her computer pinged with an email from Daniel's first meeting attendee, confirming their arrival. Emma took a breath, smoothed her skirt, and prepared to do her job. But a part of her mind was already spinning ahead, calculating odds, weighing consequences, trying to find a path through the mess she'd created that didn't end in disaster. The morning proceeded with its usual controlled chaos. Emma managed Daniel's meetings, fielded calls, rerouted crises, and kept everything running with the practiced efficiency of someone who'd perfected the art of being essential but invisible. But around 11, Jennifer from PR appeared at Emma's desk with an expression that meant trouble. "Emma, thank God you're here. We have a situation." Emma's stomach sank. What kind of situation? The business magazine that's doing a profile on Daniel? They want to interview his assistant, you know, the woman behind the man angle. They're framing it as part of their Humanizing Tech CEOs series. Absolutely not. The words came out sharp. Emma never did interviews. She'd spent 3 years carefully maintaining her position in the background, avoiding any spotlight that might make her more than just Daniel's efficient secretary. I know. But the journalist is insisting it's essential for the piece. They want to show Daniel's collaborative leadership style and how he values his team. Jennifer made air quotes, clearly skeptical of the framing. Daniel said it's up to you, but he thinks it might be good for the company image. Emma's mind raced. A profile piece meant photographs, personal details, her name and face in a business publication. It meant visibility she absolutely could not afford right now. Not when she was about to claim a massive lottery prize, not when she was conducting her secret experiment with Daniel, not when everything in her life was precariously balanced on lies and half-truths. When do they need an answer? End of day. Jennifer gave her a sympathetic look. I know you hate this stuff, but between you and me, it might actually help. Daniel's been great this week, more engaged, more personable. The board noticed. If the article can show that side of him, it'd be good timing with the Riverside acquisition talks. After Jennifer left, Emma sat frozen at her desk. Her phone buzzed, another text, this time from the financial advisor's office confirming Monday's appointment. Then an email notification from the lawyer with documents to review. Then a reminder that she needed to decide about claiming the prize anonymously or publicly, about setting up trusts, about all the bureaucratic machinery that would transform her from Emma Carter secretary into Emma Carter lottery winner. The walls felt like they were closing in. "Emma!" Daniel's voice cut through her spiraling thoughts. He stood in his doorway, jacket off, sleeves rolled up. Jennifer mentioned the interview request. Are you okay with it? I don't know, Emma admitted. I've never done anything like that. You don't have to. I can tell them no. But it would be good for the company. The company isn't more important than your comfort. Daniel moved closer, leaning against her desk. Look, I know I ask a lot of you. I know you spend most of your time making me look good while staying invisible yourself. But if you don't want to do this, I'll shut it down. Your privacy matters. The kindness in his voice made Emma's chest ache. Here he was, being considerate and protective while she was lying to him about something massive. Can I think about it? She asked. Take all the time you need. He paused, then added, Are you sure you're okay? You seem tense. Just a lot on my mind. Anything I can help with? Yes, Emma wanted to say. You can help me figure out how to tell you I'm secretly a millionaire without making you think I'm crazy or manipulative. You can help me understand if what's happening between us is real or if I'm just desperate for it to be real. You can help me figure out who I want to be now that I have the freedom to be anyone." Instead, she said, "I'm fine, just tired." Daniel studied her with those two perceptive grey eyes, and Emma had the uncomfortable feeling that he could see right through her careful composure to the chaos underneath. "Get some coffee," he said finally. "Take a break. The world won't end if you step away from your desk for 20 minutes. It was an order disguised as concern, and Emma found herself obeying. She grabbed her purse and headed to the break room, then kept walking right past it to the elevator. She needed air, space, distance from the office, and Daniel and the growing weight of her deception. Outside, the November air was crisp and clearing. Emma walked without direction, letting the rhythm of her steps calm her spinning thoughts. She found herself at a small park, barely more than a green square between buildings, and sat on a bench. Her phone buzzed again. This time it was Sophie. "Sophie, how's Operation Romance Test going?" "Emma, increasingly complicated. He's being wonderful and I'm being a liar." "Sophie, you're not a liar. You're just selectively withholding information, very different." "Emma, is it though?" "Sophie, okay, no, it's basically the same thing. But in your defense, you're doing it for romantic reasons, which is at least understandable, if not entirely ethical." "Emma, that's not as comforting as you think it is." "Sophie, come home early. We'll order Thai food and create a pros and cons list for telling Daniel the truth. I'll even break out the good wine." Emma smiled despite herself. She typed out a response, but before she could send it, her phone rang. Daniel's name flashed on the screen. "Hello? Where are you?" His voice was tight with something Emma couldn't identify. "Your desk is empty, your computer's locked, and you didn't tell anyone you were leaving." "I just stepped out for air. You told me to take a break. For 20 minutes, it's been 45. "Emma, I've been—" He stopped. "Are you okay?" The genuine concern in his voice cracked something open in Emma's chest. "I'm fine. I'm sorry. I should have said something. I'm at a park about 2 blocks west. I'll be back in 10 minutes. Silence. Then, "Which park?" "The small one on 33rd. "Why?" "Stay there." The line went dead. Emma stared at her phone, confused. Before she could process what had just happened, she saw Daniel striding across the park toward her, still in his work clothes, looking distinctly out of place among the lunchtime crowd of tourists and office workers eating sandwiches. He reached her bench, slightly out of breath. "You can't just disappear like that. I was gone for less than an hour. I'm sorry if I thought something happened to you." The words came out rough. "Your desk was empty. Your phone went straight to voicemail the first time I called, and you never just leave. Not without telling me. And I thought—" He ran a hand through his hair, the gesture agitated. "I don't know what I thought. But I've been going crazy for the past 20 minutes, imagining worst-case scenarios." Emma stood, stunned. "Daniel, I'm fine. I just needed some space." "From me?" The vulnerability in those 2 words gutted her. "No, from everything. From decisions I need to make and complications I don't know how to handle." "What complications?" He moved closer. "Emma, talk to me. What's going on?" This was it. The moment. She could tell him everything right now. The lottery, her fears, her experiment, her growing feelings. She could lay it all out and let him decide what to do with the truth. But standing in a park at lunchtime with office workers streaming past felt wrong. This conversation deserved privacy, time, space to unfold properly. And Emma wasn't ready. She still didn't know if what she felt was reciprocated, still didn't know if Daniel saw her as more than an essential employee he happened to like. "It's nothing I can't handle," Emma said finally. "I promise. I just got overwhelmed." Daniel searched her face. "You'd tell me if something was really wrong? If you needed help?" "Yes." The lie tasted bitter. He didn't look convinced, but he nodded. "Okay, but Emma, you don't have to be perfect all the time. You don't have to handle everything alone. That's supposed to be my job, remember? The emotionally constipated CEO who needs help being human." Emma laughed despite herself. "You're not emotionally constipated." "I've been called worse." His expression softened. "Come on, let's go back. And you're taking an actual lunch break, a full hour. I'll order from that Greek place you like." They walked back together, and Emma was hyper-aware of the space between them. Close enough that their hands occasionally brushed, far enough that it could be accidental. She wondered what would happen if she just reached out and took his hand. Would he pull away, or would he hold on? Back at the office, Daniel made good on his promise. He ordered lunch, blocked off Emma's calendar, and retreated to his office to deal with his conference call. Emma ate slowly, forcing herself to take the break, trying to quiet the chaos in her mind. Her phone buzzed. The lawyer again, with more documents. Monday was coming. Decision time was coming. And Emma still had no idea what she was going to do. Monday morning arrived with the kind of crystalline clarity that felt like the universe demanding honesty. Emma stood in front of her bathroom mirror at 6 a.m., trying to decide who she was going to be today. In 3 hours, she had an appointment with Marcus Chen, the lawyer who would help her navigate claiming her lottery winnings. In 5 hours, she'd be back at her desk, pretending everything was normal. And somewhere in between those two realities, she needed to figure out how to reconcile the person she'd been with the person she was becoming. "You look like you're about to throw up," Sophie observed from the doorway, already dressed for her own job at a marketing firm downtown. "Are you going to throw up?" Undecided. Emma turned away from the mirror. She'd chosen a navy dress, professional but not severe, the kind of outfit that said, "Responsible adult making important decisions." What if this is a mistake? What if I should just quit today and tell Daniel everything? What if you should stop overthinking and just go to the meeting? Sophie handed her a travel mug of coffee. "One step at a time, Em. Claim the money, understand your options, then decide about Daniel. You can't make good choices about your romantic life while you're still processing the fact that you're suddenly wealthy." It was sensible advice. Sophie was good at sensible advice, which was ironic considering her own romantic life was a series of entertaining disasters. But Emma's brain didn't want sensible. It wanted a clear path forward that didn't involve lying to someone she was falling for. "He almost kissed me on Friday," Emma blurted out. Sophie's eyes went wide. "What? You didn't tell me that?" "Because I wasn't sure if I imagined it. We were leaving the office, late, like 9:30. Everyone else had gone home. We were in the elevator and he was standing really close. And he had this look," Emma trailed off, remembering. But then the elevator doors opened and the moment passed. "Did he say anything?" "He said, 'Good night, Emma,' and walked away. But Sophie, the way he looked at me." "Okay, that's it. You need to tell him." Sophie set down her own coffee with the decisive thunk of someone making an executive decision. "Today, after your lawyer meeting, you go straight to his office and you say, 'Daniel, I won the lottery, and I have feelings for you, and I need to know if you feel the same way because I'm going insane. I can't just—' You can. You have $38 million. You can do literally anything." Sophie grabbed Emma's shoulders. "Look, I get why you started this whole secret experiment thing, but it's gone far enough. If there's something real between you two, it'll survive honesty. And if it doesn't, then at least you'll know." Emma knew Sophie was right. The rational part of her brain, the part that had kept her employed and solvent and safe for 28 years, knew that continuing down this path would only lead to disaster. But the other part, the part that had been awakened by dirt under her fingernails and Daniel's smile in the garden, wanted more time, more moments, more chances to understand what they were building before she potentially destroyed it with truth. "After the meeting," Emma promised. "I'll decide after the meeting." Marcus Chen's office was in a sleek building in Midtown, the kind of place that screamed expensive lawyer without being ostentatious about it. Emma sat in the waiting room, clutching her purse with the lottery ticket tucked safely inside, feeling like an imposter. "Ms. Carter?" A woman in her 30s with kind eyes and immaculate professional attire appeared. "I'm Diane, Mr. Chen's paralegal. He's ready for you." Marcus Chen was younger than Emma expected, maybe 40, with wire-rimmed glasses and an easy manner that immediately put her at ease. His office had walls lined with law books and a window that overlooked the chaos of midtown traffic. "Emma, it's good to meet you in person." He shook her hand firmly. "Please sit. Can I get you coffee, water?" "Water would be great." Emma's mouth felt like the Sahara. Once they were settled, Marcus opened a leather portfolio. "So you've won $38 million. First of all, congratulations. Second, let's talk about what happens next." For the next hour, Marcus walked Emma through the process with patient thoroughness. There were forms to fill out, decisions to make, timelines to understand. The biggest choice, whether to claim publicly or anonymously. New York allows anonymous claims through a trust structure, Marcus explained. You'd set up a legal entity, typically an LLC or trust, that claims the prize on your behalf. Your name never appears in any public records. The downside is it's more complex and takes longer to set up. How much longer? 2 to 3 weeks, typically. We'd need to establish the trust, transfer the ticket ownership, then file the claim. But it protects your privacy completely. No reporters, no long-lost relatives suddenly appearing, no one knowing your financial situation changed. Emma thought about the magazine interview Jennifer had mentioned, about her face potentially appearing in a business publication right as she claimed a massive lottery prize, about the impossibility of keeping her secret if her name and photo were plastered everywhere. "Anonymous," she said firmly. "Definitely anonymous." Marcus nodded approvingly. "Smart choice. Now let's talk about the money itself. After taxes, you're looking at roughly $22 million. Still life-changing, obviously, but important to have realistic expectations. 22 million. The number was somehow both more real and less comprehensible than 38 million had been. "I'll connect you with a financial advisor, someone who specializes in sudden wealth," Marcus continued. "But my general advice is this. Don't make any major decisions for at least 6 months. Don't quit your job. Don't buy a house. Don't tell everyone you know. Give yourself time to adjust psychologically before your life changes materially." "What if I've already been making decisions?" Emma asked quietly. Marcus gave her a shrewd look. "What kind of decisions?" "I've been testing someone to see if they treat me differently when they don't know about the money." "A romantic interest?" Emma nodded, feeling heat creep up her neck. Marcus leaned back in his chair, considering. "That's not uncommon. Sudden wealth makes people question every relationship, wonder if they're valued for themselves or their money. But Emma, let me ask you something. Is this person likely to care about the money?" Emma thought about Daniel, about the man who'd built a company from nothing, who had more wealth than he probably knew what to do with, who'd been genuinely concerned when she disappeared for 45 minutes. "No," she admitted. "He has his own money, probably more than I'll ever have, even with the lottery." "Then what are you really testing?" The question hit like a punch. Emma stared at the water glass in her hands, watching condensation drip down the sides. "I guess I'm testing whether he sees me, really sees me, not just as someone useful, but as a person worth choosing. And keeping this secret helps you determine that how exactly? Because if he shows interest now, when I'm still just his secretary, then I know it's real. I know he wants me, not the idea of me or what I can do for him or—" Emma stopped, realizing how convoluted her logic sounded when said aloud. Marcus was quiet for a moment. Then he said, "I'm a lawyer, not a therapist, but I've worked with enough lottery winners to recognize certain patterns. And one of the most common is this. People use the money as a test. They wait to tell loved ones, watching for signs of worthiness, convinced that anyone who doesn't know about the money can be trusted more than anyone who does. But all that really accomplishes is creating a foundation of dishonesty. You think I should tell him? I think you should ask yourself what you're more afraid of. him not wanting you, or him wanting you for the wrong reasons, because those are two very different fears, and they require two very different solutions. Emma sat with that, feeling the weight of it. She told herself she was being smart, strategic, careful, but maybe she was just being a coward, too afraid of rejection to risk honest vulnerability. "How long do I have?" Emma asked. "Before the trust is established and I officially claim the prize?" 2 to 3 weeks, like I said. But Emma, the longer you wait to tell people who matter, the more betrayed they'll feel when they find out. Trust me on this. After the meeting, Emma walked through Midtown in a daze. She had paperwork to sign, forms to return, decisions to make about investment strategies and charitable giving and tax implications. But all she could think about was Marcus's question. "What are you really testing?" Her phone buzzed. "Daniel. Daniel, where are you? Your calendar says you had a morning appointment, but you didn't mention what for." Emma stared at the message. She could lie. Say doctor's appointment, personal errand, something vague and plausible. Or she could start telling the truth, piece by piece, until the whole story came out. Emma, meeting with a lawyer. Nothing serious, just personal business. "I'll be back by noon." Daniel. "Everything okay?" Emma. "Yes, I promise. See you soon." She pocketed her phone and headed for the subway, but found herself walking instead. She needed time to think, to process, to figure out her next move. The problem was, Emma realized, she'd been approaching this whole situation like it was a problem to be solved, a strategic challenge with right and wrong answers. But relationships weren't business deals, feelings weren't quarterly projections, and Daniel wasn't a test to be passed or failed. He was just a person, a brilliant, complicated, occasionally infuriating person who made her laugh and challenged her assumptions and looked at her sometimes like she was the most interesting thing in his world. And she was lying to him. By the time Emma reached the office, it was 11:45. She stepped off the elevator and immediately sensed something was wrong. The usual office hum felt different, charged with an energy that made her instincts prickle. Jennifer from PR was at Emma's desk, looking agitated. "Oh, thank God you're back. We have a situation." Emma's stomach dropped. "What kind of situation?" "The journalist, the one doing the profile. She showed up early. She's in Daniel's office right now, and he's being Daniel, which is to say, robotic and unhelpful." Jennifer wrung her hands. "I tried to reschedule, but she insisted, and Daniel said fine, and now it's a disaster. Can you please go in there and save this?" Emma glanced at Daniel's closed office door. Through the glass walls, she could see him sitting stiffly behind his desk, a woman with a recorder and notebook perched across from him. His body language screamed uncomfortable, and even from here, Emma could tell the interview was going poorly. "What do you want me to do?" "Just go in, be yourself. Show her the human side of how this office works. Please, Emma." The article publishes on Wednesday, and if it's a hatchet job, the board is going to lose their minds, right when we need them calm for the Riverside deal. Emma took a breath. This was fine. She could handle this. She'd spent 3 years managing Daniel's image, smoothing over his rough edges, making him appear approachable. She could do it one more time. She knocked once on Daniel's door and entered without waiting for permission, the way she always did when it was urgent. Daniel's expression shifted when he saw her, relief mixing with something else Emma couldn't quite identify. "Emma, good timing. This is Rachel Morrison from Capital Business Magazine. Rachel, this is Emma Carter, my executive assistant." Rachel was in her 40s, with sharp eyes that missed nothing, and the kind of smile that didn't quite reach those eyes. She stood and extended a hand. "Ms. Carter, I was hoping to speak with you. Your boss has been decidedly uninformative about his work process." "That's because there's nothing interesting about my work process," Daniel said flatly. "I come in, I work, I go home." Not exactly compelling journalism. Emma suppressed a smile. This was classic Daniel, brilliant with technology and strategy, hopeless with people. "What Mr. Hartwell means," Emma said smoothly, "is that his process is so integrated into his daily routine that he doesn't always recognize the interesting parts. May I sit?" "Please." Rachel gestured to the chair next to hers, her interest clearly piqued. For the next 30 minutes, Emma walked Rachel through a typical day at Hartwell Innovations, painting a picture of a CEO who was demanding but fair, innovative but practical, driven but not robotic. She shared carefully chosen anecdotes, the time Daniel had rearranged his entire schedule to attend an employee's father's funeral, the way he personally responded to intern emails, how he'd instituted a no-meeting Friday policy to give everyone time for deep work. Rachel's questions grew more pointed. "And what's it like working for someone with Daniel Hartwell's intensity?" Emma glanced at Daniel, who was watching her with an unreadable expression. "Challenging," she admitted, "but in the best way. He expects excellence, which means you're constantly growing, constantly learning. He doesn't accept mediocrity from himself, so he doesn't accept it from anyone else. But he also respects boundaries, values efficiency, and genuinely cares about the company culture, even if he's not always great at showing it." "That's quite an endorsement." "It's the truth." Emma met Rachel's eyes. "I've worked here for 3 years. If it was as bad as some articles suggest, I would have left. And yet you've stayed in the same position. Why not move up? With your obvious competence, you could certainly advance." The question felt like a trap. Emma could feel Daniel's attention sharpening, waiting for her answer. "I'm good at what I do," Emma said carefully. "And there's value in mastering a role rather than constantly chasing the next promotion. Not everyone defines success the same way. But surely you have ambitions beyond being someone's assistant." There was condescension in Rachel's tone that made Emma's spine stiffen. Before she could respond, Daniel cut in, his voice cold. "Emma isn't just someone's assistant. She's one of the smartest people in this building. And frankly, I'm lucky she's chosen to work with me rather than against me. Any company would be fortunate to have her in any capacity." Silence fell. Rachel blinked, clearly surprised by Daniel's vehemence. Emma felt heat flood her cheeks. "That's quite an endorsement," Rachel said, recovering. "It sounds like you two have a strong working relationship." "We do," Daniel said, still looking at Emma. "She makes me better at my job. Better at being human, honestly." The words hung in the air between them, an echo of what he'd said at the garden, but somehow more significant in front of a journalist, witnessed and recorded. Rachel's expression shifted into something calculating. "And is there anything beyond a professional relationship? The chemistry between you is quite noticeable." "That's inappropriate," Daniel said sharply. "It's a valid question for a profile piece about your management style, and no, it's not." Emma stood, her professional smile firmly in place, but her eyes hard. "This interview is about Hartwell Innovations and Daniel's leadership. His personal life isn't relevant to your article. Now, if you'll excuse me, I have work to do." She left the office before Rachel could respond, her heart pounding. Behind her, she heard Daniel firmly ending the interview, his tone brooking no argument. Emma returned to her desk and tried to focus on her computer screen, but her hands were shaking. That had been too close, too revealing. The way Daniel had defended her, the way he'd looked at her, the way Rachel had noticed the chemistry between them. This was spiraling out of control. 5 minutes later, Daniel emerged from his office, looking thunderous. Rachel was gone, presumably escorted out by building security. He walked straight to Emma's desk. "Are you okay?" "I'm fine." "You're not fine. You're shaking." He moved around her desk, crouching down so they were at eye level. "Emma, look at me." She did, reluctantly. His grey eyes were concerned and something else, angry but not at her. "That was out of line," Daniel said quietly. "What she asked about us, it was completely inappropriate. I'm going to call the magazine and—" Don't. Emma touched his arm without thinking. It'll just make it worse, make it seem like there's something to hide. Isn't there? The question stopped Emma's heart. What? Daniel held her gaze. Emma, I'm not blind, and I'm not good at this, at reading people, at understanding emotional nuances. But even I can tell something's changed between us. Ever since last week, ever since the garden, it's been different. Different how? Emma's voice came out barely above a whisper. I don't know. He looked frustrated. Better? More complicated? Both? He ran a hand through his hair, that gesture he always made when he was working through a problem. All I know is that I look forward to seeing you every morning. I find excuses to ask you questions just so we can talk. And when you disappeared on Friday, I panicked in a way that had nothing to do with work schedules and everything to do with... He stopped, seeming to realize he'd said too much. Emma's chest felt tight. With what? Daniel stood abruptly, putting distance between them. Nothing, forget it. I'm your boss. This is inappropriate. I shouldn't have... Daniel. Emma stood too, rounding her desk to face him. Finish the sentence. He looked at her, and Emma saw conflict warring in his expression, professional boundaries fighting against something more honest, more vulnerable. Everything to do with the fact that I care about you, he said finally, not just as my assistant, as you. The office seemed to shrink around them. Emma was aware of other employees potentially watching through the glass walls, of the professional line they were dancing along, of the massive secret still sitting between them like a wall. She should tell him, right now, about the lottery, about her experiment, about everything. But her phone rang, the main office line that only rang for board members or emergencies. Emma glanced at it, torn. Answer it, Daniel said, stepping back. The moment shattered like glass. Emma picked up the phone. Daniel Hartwell's office. Emma, it's Catherine from the board. Catherine Yee's voice was tight with urgency. Is Daniel available? We have a situation with Riverside. They're threatening to pull out of negotiations. One moment. Emma put Catherine on hold and looked at Daniel. Board. Riverside emergency. Just like that, CEO mode slammed back into place. Daniel straightened, his expression clearing into sharp focus. Transfer it to my office. And can you pull the Riverside files? All of them. We're going to be here late. Of course. He started toward his office, then paused at the doorway. Emma, what I said, we should talk, properly. Tonight, after this is handled. Emma nodded, not trusting her voice. Daniel disappeared into his office, and Emma transferred the call, then pulled up the Riverside files. Around her, the office continued its normal rhythm, oblivious to the fact that Emma's entire world had just tilted on its axis. He cared about her, not just professionally, but personally. He'd all but admitted there was something between them, something real and significant and terrifying, and she was still lying to him. Emma pulled out her phone and texted Sophie. Emma, he basically just confessed feelings for me, and I still haven't told him about the money. I'm the worst person alive. Sophie, you're not the worst person alive, but you need to tell him, tonight, no more excuses. Emma, I know, I will, after the Riverside crisis is handled. Sophie, promise? Emma stared at the message, thinking about Marcus's warning, about the foundation of dishonesty she was building, about the way Daniel had looked at her when he'd said he cared. Emma, promise. She set down her phone and got to work pulling files, coordinating calls, managing the crisis. Because that's what she did. She managed chaos, solved problems, kept everything running smoothly. But tonight, she was going to stop managing and start being honest. Tonight, she was going to tell Daniel Hartwell the truth and hope that what they were building was strong enough to survive it. The Riverside crisis consumed the entire afternoon and bled into evening. Emma ordered dinner, Thai for her, Indian for Daniel, and they ate at their respective desks while conference calls droned on and emails multiplied like aggressive bacteria. By 8 p.m., the situation had stabilized. Riverside wasn't pulling out after all. Their CEO had just been posturing for better terms. Daniel negotiated with the cold precision of a surgeon, giving ground where it didn't matter and holding firm where it did. Emma watched him work, thinking about all the times she'd witnessed this exact scene. Daniel in his element, utterly focused, brilliant and uncompromising. She'd fallen for this version of him first, the competent, controlled CEO who made million-dollar decisions with calm certainty. But it was the other Daniel she'd discovered recently that had made everything complicated, the one who studied philosophy and got flustered by carpentry and panicked when she disappeared for 45 minutes. "We're done." Daniel emerged from his office at 8:30, loosening his tie with visible relief. Riverside is back on track. Catherine is happy. The board can stop hyperventilating. Good. Emma saved the document she'd been working on, talking points for tomorrow's meeting. "I'm glad it's resolved." "Emma?" Daniel moved to her desk, that familiar intensity back in his grey eyes. "We should talk." "About earlier, about what I said." This was it. The moment Emma had been simultaneously dreading and craving. Her heart hammered against her ribs like it was trying to escape. "Okay," she managed. "Yes, we should talk." "Not here." Daniel glanced around the office. Most people had gone home, but there were still a few stragglers in the open workspace, pretending not to watch their CEO having an intense conversation with his assistant. "Can we go somewhere more private?" "Your office?" "Too much like work." He paused, then said, "There's a wine bar 2 blocks from here. Quiet. Would that be okay?" Emma nodded, not trusting her voice. She grabbed her purse, heavy with the lottery ticket that had started this whole mess, and followed Daniel to the elevator. They rode down in silence, the tension between them thick enough to slice. Emma's mind raced through possible opening lines. "So, funny story about my morning meeting with the lawyer. No. Remember how I seemed different last Tuesday? There's a reason for that. Worse. I won $38 million, and I've been lying to you for a week because I have trust issues, and also I'm falling in love with you. Absolutely catastrophic." The wine bar was exactly as Daniel had described. Small, intimate, with exposed brick walls and lighting low enough to make everything feel like a secret. Daniel secured a corner table far from other patrons and ordered a bottle of red without consulting Emma. She didn't mind. Her brain was too busy spiraling to make decisions about wine. "So," Daniel said once the server had left. "This is awkward." Emma laughed, a slightly hysterical sound that made Daniel's mouth twitch with amusement. "I'm not good at this," he continued. "At personal conversations, at feelings. You know this about me. I do know this about you. But I'm going to try anyway because—" He stopped, seeming to gather courage. "Emma, I think I've been attracted to you since approximately 6 months after you started working for me. But you were my employee, and there were power dynamics and professional boundaries, and I was terrified of making you uncomfortable or making you feel like your job was contingent on anything other than your exceptional competence." Emma's breath caught. 6 months? Maybe sooner. I don't know. I've spent the last 3 years actively trying not to notice how brilliant you are, how funny you are when you let your guard down, how you bite your lower lip when you're concentrating on something difficult. He said all of this while looking at the table, not quite able to meet her eyes. "And then last week, something shifted. You shifted. You seemed lighter, more present, and suddenly I couldn't ignore it anymore. Couldn't pretend I only valued you professionally." The wine arrived. Daniel poured with hands that weren't quite steady. Emma took a large sip, needing the fortification. "Why are you telling me this now?" Emma asked quietly. "Because that journalist asked if there was something between us, and my immediate instinct was to deny it, to protect you from speculation and gossip and all the awful things that happen when workplace relationships become public." Daniel finally met her eyes. "But then I realized I was more afraid of losing you entirely than I was of complications. So I'm telling you the truth, even though it might make everything awkward, even though you might quit, even though I'm probably breaking about 17 different HR policies." Emma's chest felt tight. This was the moment. He'd been honest with her, vulnerably, painfully honest. She owed him the same. "Daniel, I need to tell you something. You don't feel the same way." He said it flatly, already retreating behind his professional mask. "That's fine, I understand. We can pretend this conversation never happened and I won the lottery." Daniel stopped mid-sentence. "What?" "Last Tuesday, the morning I was late. I bought a lottery ticket the week before, just a random impulse, and I checked it at the bodega and I won." The words tumbled out in a rush, desperate to escape. $38 million. Well, 22 after taxes. I won $22 million, and I didn't tell anyone except my lawyer and my roommate, and I kept coming to work because I wanted to... "Wait." Daniel held up a hand. "You won the lottery. When?" "Last Tuesday, a week ago. And you've been coming to work every day since then?" "Yes." "Why?" This was the hard part. The part where Emma had to explain her reasoning without sounding completely unhinged. "Because I needed to know if what I was feeling was real. If we," she gestured between them, "if there was something here that wasn't just convenience or proximity, or me projecting, because I'd spent 3 years half in love with you." Daniel went very still. "Half in love with me? More than half, if I'm being honest." Emma's voice shook slightly. "But I couldn't tell if you saw me as a person or just as someone useful. And then I won all this money, and suddenly I had options. I could quit. I could do anything. And I thought if I kept it secret, I could test whether you actually cared about me or just valued what I did for you. So you've been lying to me." Daniel's voice was carefully neutral. "For a week. Not lying exactly. More like selectively withholding information. That's literally what lying is, Emma." The use of her first name instead of some deflecting formality felt significant. Emma took another sip of wine, trying to organize her thoughts. "I know, and I'm sorry. I justified it to myself as research, as being careful, as protecting myself. But really I was just scared. Scared that if I told you about the money, everything would change. Scared that if I quit without knowing how you felt, I'd always wonder. Scared that I wouldn't choose you if you weren't my assistant." Daniel's expression was unreadable. "That's what you were really testing, isn't it? Whether I valued Emma Carter the person or Emma Carter the employee." "Yes." The admission felt like pulling out a splinter. Painful, but necessary. Daniel leaned back in his chair, processing. Emma watched him, trying to read his reaction and failing. This was the Daniel who negotiated billion-dollar deals, contained, analytical, giving nothing away. "Say something," Emma pleaded. "Yell at me. Tell me I'm manipulative. Tell me you can't believe I'm trying to decide," Daniel interrupted, "whether to be angry that you lied or relieved that you cared enough to want to test me." Emma blinked. "What? You won $22 million, and your first instinct wasn't to quit your job and disappear. It was to figure out if your feelings were reciprocated." He tilted his head, studying her. "That's either incredibly romantic or deeply neurotic. Possibly both." "I vote both," Emma said weakly. Daniel almost smiled. Almost. "How did the test go? Did I pass?" "You weren't supposed to know it was a test." "Emma, I'm not an idiot. You've been acting different all week. Lighter, like I said, but also more watchful. Like you were observing me instead of just managing me. I noticed. I just didn't understand why." Emma felt heat creep up her neck. "You noticed." "Of course I noticed. I notice everything about you. That's the problem." Daniel ran a hand through his hair, that familiar gesture of frustration. "I notice when you change your shampoo. I notice when you're tired because you stayed up late watching bad reality TV with your roommate. I notice when you're wearing those heels that hurt your feet by 3 p.m. so you switch to the flats you keep under your desk. I notice all of it, and I've spent 3 years pretending I don't." Emma's heart was doing acrobatics. "Daniel, so yes, I noticed you were different, but I thought maybe you were finally seeing me too. Not just your demanding boss, but an actual person. I thought maybe we were both noticing each other for the first time." He paused. And then I find out you've been conducting some kind of experiment, testing me like I'm a hypothesis to be proven. The hurt in his voice made Emma's chest ache. I wasn't testing your worthiness. I was testing my own judgment, trying to figure out if I was reading the situation correctly or just desperate for something that wasn't there. And what did you conclude? Emma met his eyes. That I'm falling in love with you. Have been for a while. And that I'm terrified because loving someone means being vulnerable, and vulnerable means potentially getting hurt, and... She stopped, overwhelmed by her own honesty. Daniel was quiet for a long moment. Then he said, I was right. Incredibly romantic and deeply neurotic. Despite everything, Emma laughed. I'm sorry. I should have just been honest from the start. Probably. Daniel refilled their wine glasses. But I understand why you weren't. Money changes everything, changes how people see you, how they treat you, what they want from you, and you wanted to know if what we had was real before that variable entered the equation. So you're not angry? Oh, I'm angry. But his tone was mild. I'm angry that you didn't trust me enough to tell me. I'm angry that you thought I was the kind of person who would treat you differently based on your financial status. And I'm angry that you spent a week essentially lying to me while I was trying to figure out if I should risk telling you how I felt. Emma winced. When you put it like that, it sounds really bad. It was really bad. Daniel leaned forward. But I'm also impressed by your strategic thinking. Testing variables, controlling for external factors, gathering data before making a decision. You'd be good in business development. Is that your way of saying you forgive me? I don't know yet. He was quiet again, thinking. Emma waited, her heart in her throat. Can I ask you something? Anything. If I had failed your test, if I hadn't shown any interest, hadn't asked you to the garden, hadn't defended you to that journalist, would you have quit, taken your money and disappeared? Emma considered lying, softening the truth. But she'd done enough lying. Probably. Yes. Daniel nodded slowly like she'd confirmed something he'd suspected. So the entire future of our relationship was contingent on me, someone who's admittedly terrible at expressing emotions, somehow demonstrating sufficient interest within the arbitrary time frame of your experiment. That does sound problematic when you phrase it that way. It is problematic, Emma. What if I'd been slightly more obtuse than usual? What if the Riverside crisis had happened last week and I'd been distracted? What if I'd been trying to maintain professional boundaries and succeeded a little too well? His voice rose slightly. You would have left. You would have taken the easy way out instead of having one honest conversation. The words hit like a slap because they were true. Emma had been so focused on protecting herself from potential rejection that she hadn't considered the other side. That Daniel might be protecting himself too, that he might need clear signals just as much as she did. You're right, Emma said quietly. I was being a coward, hiding behind my experiment because it felt safer than just asking you directly how you felt. So ask me now. Emma looked up. What? Ask me now. No tests, no experiments, no protective strategies. Just ask me. Emma's mouth went dry, but she forced herself to say it. Daniel, do you have feelings for me? Real feelings? Beyond professional respect? Yes. The answer came immediately, without hesitation. I have very inconvenient, very unprofessional, very real feelings for you. I think about you constantly. I make excuses to call you into my office just so we can talk. When you disappeared on Friday, I legitimately panicked because the thought of something happening to you. He stopped, seeming to struggle with the emotion. You asked earlier why I'm telling you this now. The truth is, I'm terrified. Because everything good in my life I've built through control and planning and strategy. But this, I can't control or plan or strategize. I just have to feel it and hope it doesn't destroy everything. Emma felt tears prick her eyes. I'm scared too. I know. Daniel reached across the table and took her hand, the first time he'd ever done so deliberately, not as an accidental brush or professional gesture. His fingers were warm, steady. But here's the thing, Emma. I've spent 3 years respecting your boundaries, maintaining professional distance, trying to be a good boss. And now you're telling me you've been in love with me this whole time, and we could have been having this conversation months ago if either of us had been brave enough to be honest. So, what do we do now? Daniel's thumb traced circles on the back of her hand, the touch sending electricity up Emma's arm. I think we start over. No secrets, no tests, no protective strategies. Just two people who apparently have terrible timing and worse communication skills trying to figure out if this thing between us is real. It's real, Emma said. At least for me. For me too. He squeezed her hand. But Emma, I need you to understand something. I'm not good at this. At relationships, at emotional availability, at any of the things that probably matter. I'm going to be awkward and oblivious, and I'm going to bury myself in work when things get hard. Those are things I'm working on, but they're not going to change overnight. I'm not asking you to change. I'm asking you to be honest with me. I can do honest. Daniel smiled slightly. Honest is, I want to kiss you right now, but we're in public, and you're technically still my employee, and there are about 17 reasons why that's a terrible idea. Emma's breath caught. What if I quit? Tonight. Right now. I'll text HR. Effective immediately. She was only half joking. Daniel laughed, a real laugh that transformed his usually serious face. Let's maybe think that through a bit more strategically. You quitting via text while we're at a wine bar would raise questions. Good point. Emma reluctantly pulled her hand back, immediately missing the contact. So what's the plan? Do we have to keep this secret, navigate company policies, pretend nothing's changed? I honestly don't know. Daniel looked frustrated. I've never been in this position before. Usually I can research best practices, consult experts, develop a strategy, but this, us, there's no roadmap. We could create one. Emma felt herself slipping back into problem-solving mode. Make a list of potential complications. Address each one systematically. Emma, evaluate risk factors. Establish boundaries. Emma. Daniel's voice was gentle but firm. We're not strategizing a business deal. We're two people who like each other trying to figure out what comes next. It doesn't need a 20-page action plan. Everything needs an action plan. Says the woman who just won the lottery and decided to keep her job to conduct romantic experiments. But he was smiling. Maybe sometimes we just have to make decisions without knowing all the variables. Emma considered this revolutionary concept. That sounds terrifying. It is terrifying. Daniel signaled for the check. But I think that's kind of the point. If it wasn't scary, it wouldn't matter as much. They split the bill. Emma insisted, much to Daniel's consternation, and walked out into the November night. The air was crisp and cold, and Emma pulled her coat tighter around her shoulders. "Can I walk you to the subway?" Daniel asked. "I'm taking a cab tonight." The words came out before Emma really thought about them, and she saw Daniel register what that meant, that she could afford to take a cab instead of the subway, that her life had already materially changed, even if she was still pretending otherwise. "Right, the lottery." Daniel looked at her. "Is it weird, knowing you have all that money?" "Surreal," Emma admitted. "I keep expecting to wake up and find out it was a dream, or a mistake, like the lottery commission is going to call and say, 'Sorry, we calculated wrong, you actually won $20. What are you going to do with it?" "I don't know yet. My financial advisor wants me to wait 6 months before making any major decisions. Let it settle psychologically." "That's smart." They reached the corner where Emma would hail a cab. Daniel didn't move to leave. "Emma, I meant what I said about starting over, being honest, so I need to tell you something else." Emma's stomach clenched. "Okay, if we do this, if we try to make this work, I'm going to need you to promise me something. No more tests, no more experiments. No more withholding information because you're scared or uncertain or trying to protect yourself." His grey eyes were intense. "I can handle a lot. I can handle you being rich. I can handle navigating workplace policies. I can handle learning how to be in an actual relationship instead of just married to my company. But I can't handle not being able to trust what you're telling me." The words hit hard because they were fair. Emma had violated his trust, maybe not deliberately, maybe not maliciously, but she'd done it nonetheless. And if they were going to try to build something real, that foundation needed to be solid. "I promise," Emma said, "no more secrets, even when I'm scared, especially when I'm scared." Daniel searched her face, seeming to assess her sincerity. Then he smiled, that warm, transformative smile that made him look younger and less burdened. "Good, because I'm terrified right now, and I'm telling you anyway, so I expect reciprocity." "What are you terrified of?" "That I'm going to screw this up, that I'm going to be so focused on work that I'll neglect you, that you're going to realize dating your former boss is weird and complicated and not worth the hassle." He stepped closer. "That this conversation is the best thing that's happened to me in years, and I'm going to do something to ruin it." Emma's heart felt too large for her chest. "You're not going to ruin it." "How do you know?" "Because you care enough to be scared." "That's—" Emma struggled to find the words. "That's everything, actually." They stood there on the corner, city noise swirling around them, close enough to touch, but not quite touching. Emma thought about all the romance novels she'd read, all the movies where this scene would end with a kiss. But this wasn't fiction. This was her real life, with real complications and real stakes. "I should go," Emma said finally. "It's late." "Yeah." But Daniel didn't move. "We'll figure this out, tomorrow, with clearer heads and a plan." "A plan?" Daniel's mouth quirked. "There's the Emma I know. Someone has to be strategic." Emma raised her hand to hail a cab. One pulled over immediately, the kind of small luxury her new financial situation afforded, but that she hadn't quite gotten used to yet. "Thank you. For tonight. For being honest. Thank you for finally telling me the truth." Daniel opened the cab door for her. "Even if your timing was terrible and your methodology questionable." Emma laughed, sliding into the back seat. "I'll work on that." "Emma?" Daniel leaned into the open door. "For the record, I'm glad you didn't quit. I'm glad you stayed long enough for us to have this conversation. Even if the path here was convoluted and mildly unethical." "Mildly?" "Deeply unethical, but effective, apparently." He straightened. "Text me when you get home, so I know you're safe." "That's very boyfriend-like behavior." "Is it?" Daniel looked genuinely uncertain. "I'm new at this." "It is. And yes, I'll text you." Emma pulled the door closed and the cab pulled away. She watched through the rear window as Daniel stood on the corner, hands in his pockets, watching her leave. Then he turned and walked in the opposite direction, and Emma felt a pang of something she couldn't quite name. Loss, maybe, or fear, or the strange ache of wanting something and finally having permission to reach for it. Her phone buzzed. "Sophie. Sophie. How did the truth-telling go?" "Emma. Surprisingly well. He wasn't happy about the lying, but he understood why I did it." "Sophie. And?" "Emma. And we're going to try to make this work, to be honest and scary and real." "Sophie." "Emma. Oh my God. Do you know what this means?" "Emma. What?" "Sophie. You're dating your boss. You're dating your boss. This is the romance I've been waiting 3 years for." "Emma. Technically, I'm still his employee, so we haven't quite figured out the logistics yet." "Sophie. Details." "When I get home, we're opening champagne, and you're telling me everything, and I mean everything." Emma smiled, pocketing her phone. The cab wound through Manhattan streets, and she watched the city lights blur past, feeling like she was suspended between two versions of her life, the before and the after. Before the lottery, before the honesty, before Daniel Hartwell had admitted he noticed when she changed her shampoo. By the time she reached her apartment, Sophie was already there with 2 champagne flutes and a bottle chilling in the freezer. "Talk," Sophie commanded. "Start at the beginning and don't leave anything out." So Emma did. She told Sophie everything, Daniel's confession at the wine bar, her own fumbling honesty, the promise to start over without secrets. Sophie listened with wide eyes, occasionally interjecting with encouraging noises or gasps of delight. "This is the best story," Sophie declared when Emma finished. "You literally won the lottery, both actually and metaphorically. Do you know how rare that is? I'm aware of the statistical improbability. So what happens now? Do you quit? Start dating officially? Have a secret office romance?" "I honestly don't know." Emma accepted the champagne Sophie poured. "We said we'd figure it out tomorrow, with clearer heads." Translation: you're both going to overthink it until you've analyzed every possible outcome and created contingency plans for scenarios that will never happen. That's not... Emma stopped. "Okay, that's accurate." They clinked glasses, and Emma took a sip of champagne that tasted like celebration and possibility. Her phone buzzed. Daniel, did you make it home safely?" Emma: "Yes. Currently being interrogated by Sophie about every detail of our conversation." Daniel: "Should I be worried about what you're telling her?" Emma: "Very worried. She's already planning our wedding." Daniel: "Tell her I need at least 3 dates before I start thinking about wedding venues." Emma: "Only 3? Daniel: "I'm a fast decision maker when I have good data. And the data suggests we're going to be insufferably happy together." Emma's heart fluttered. She showed the exchange to Sophie, who actually squealed. "He's flirting with you via text," Sophie said. "Emma, he's flirting, with emoji potential and everything." "Let's not get ahead of ourselves. You're right, you should pace yourself. Maybe date for 6 months, then get engaged, then have a long engagement while you plan the perfect wedding." Sophie: "And then honeymoon in, like, Italy or something ridiculously romantic. We literally just admitted we have feelings for each other. Can we maybe get through one actual date before planning the wedding?" Sophie grinned. "Fine, but I'm calling dibs on maid of honor." Emma threw a pillow at her, but she was smiling. For the first time in a week, maybe in years, everything felt possible. Uncertain, yes. Complicated, absolutely. But possible. Her phone buzzed again. Daniel: "Good night, Emma. Thank you for taking a chance on me, even if your methodology was questionable." Emma: "Good night, Daniel. Thank you for noticing when I change my shampoo." Daniel: "Always." Emma set down her phone and looked at Sophie, who was watching her with an expression of pure delight. "You're glowing," Sophie observed. "I'm not glowing." "You are literally glowing, like radiating happiness in a way that's borderline obnoxious." Emma couldn't argue, because Sophie was right. She felt lit from within, buzzing with the kind of hope she'd forgotten was possible. Everything was messy and uncertain, and there were still dozens of complications to navigate. But for tonight, none of that mattered. Tonight, she was just Emma Carter, lottery winner, former secretary, and the woman who'd finally been brave enough to tell Daniel Hartwell the truth. Tomorrow, they'd figure out what came next. Emma woke up Tuesday morning to 17 texts, 3 missed calls, and the strangest sensation that her life had fundamentally shifted overnight. The texts were mostly from Sophie, documenting her real-time reactions to Emma's situation with increasingly enthusiastic commentary. The missed calls were from Marcus Chen, her lawyer, probably with updates about the trust paperwork. And the strange sensation was the combination of nervous excitement and mild terror that came from knowing she was about to see Daniel Hartwell, not just her boss anymore, but the man who'd told her he noticed everything about her and wanted to try building something real. "Sophie, please tell me you're not going to dress like a secretary today." "You need to dress like a woman who won the lottery and is dating a CEO." Emma: "I am a secretary, technically, for at least another few weeks until we figure out the employment situation." Sophie: "Details. Wear the green dress, the one that makes you look like you could run a Fortune 500 company while also stealing hearts." Emma: "That's a very specific aesthetic." Sophie: "Trust me, green dress. Good luck. Text me everything." Emma stared at her closet, where the green dress hung innocently among her collection of professional neutrals. It was more daring than her usual work attire, fitted, confident, The kind of thing she'd bought on impulse 6 months ago and never had the courage to wear. Today felt like a day for courage. She put on the dress, spent an extra 15 minutes on her hair, and allowed herself a swipe of lipstick that was bolder than her usual nude shade. Looking in the mirror, Emma barely recognized herself. She looked like someone who made decisions instead of just executing them, someone who took risks, someone who told the truth and survived it. The subway ride to Manhattan felt different, or maybe Emma felt different. She found herself noticing things she usually missed: a couple holding hands, a street musician playing something jazzy and hopeful, the way morning light hit the buildings and made the whole city glow golden. When she stepped off the elevator at Hartwell Innovations, the office was already humming with its usual Tuesday energy. But Emma felt eyes follow her as she walked to her desk. Curious glances, appraising looks, the subtle shift in atmosphere that suggested something had changed. Jennifer from PR materialized almost immediately. "Emma, you look amazing. Is that new?" "The dress." "No, I've had it for—" "Not the dress. You look different. Happy." Jennifer tilted her head. Did something happen? Emma's mind raced through possible responses. She'd promised Daniel honesty, but that didn't mean broadcasting their situation to the entire office before they'd figured it out themselves. "Just a good morning," she said carefully. "Nice weather for November." Jennifer looked skeptical but didn't push. "Well, whatever it is, keep doing it. You're glowing." She glanced toward Daniel's closed office door. "He's been in since 7. Wanted me to tell you he needs to see you when you arrive." Emma's stomach flipped. "Thanks, Jennifer." She set down her purse, booted up her computer, and took a steadying breath. Through the glass walls of Daniel's office, she could see him at his desk, focused on his laptop with that intense concentration she knew so well. He wore a navy suit today, crisp white shirt, no tie yet. His morning uniform before the day's meetings required full corporate armor. Emma knocked once and entered. Daniel looked up, and something shifted in his expression when he saw her. Surprise, appreciation, something warmer that made her feel simultaneously powerful and vulnerable. "Emma." He stood, which he never did when she entered his office. "You look—" He stopped, seeming to struggle for words. "That's a good color on you." "Thank you." Emma closed the door behind her, suddenly aware of how exposed they were. Anyone walking by could see them through the glass walls. "Jennifer said you needed to see me." "I did." "Do." Daniel moved around his desk, but stopped a careful distance away, respecting the professional space even as his eyes told a different story. "I've been thinking about our conversation last night. About the complications of our situation." Emma's heart sank. "Daniel, if you've changed your mind—" "I haven't changed my mind." He said it quickly, firmly. "But I did spend most of the night researching company policy on workplace relationships, and the situation is more complicated than I'd like." "How complicated?" Complicated enough that HR would require disclosure, oversight, and potentially reassignment to avoid conflicts of interest. Daniel ran a hand through his hair. "Which means if we want to do this properly, and I want to do this properly, we need to address the fact that you're my direct report." Emma had known this conversation was coming, but hearing it laid out so practically made everything feel suddenly real. "So, what are you suggesting?" "I'm suggesting that you consider accepting a different position within the company. We have an opening in business development, strategic planning, and organizational development, actually, which is close to what you described wanting to do. It would be a promotion, obviously, better title, better salary, your own office, and critically, you wouldn't report to me anymore." Emma blinked. "You're offering me a promotion so we can date?" "I'm offering you a promotion because you're overqualified for your current role, and I've been selfishly keeping you as my assistant because you make my life easier." Daniel's expression was serious. "The timing is convenient for our situation, yes. But Emma, I meant what I said last night. You're capable of more than managing my calendar. This position would actually utilize your strategic thinking, your ability to see systemic patterns, your talent for understanding what makes people and organizations work. When did this opening happen? About 6 months ago. I've been interviewing candidates, but no one felt right. And then last night, I realized I'd been looking for someone exactly like you while you were sitting at the desk outside my office the whole time. He smiled slightly. I'm occasionally an idiot. Emma's mind spun. A promotion would solve the immediate conflict of interest problem. It would give her legitimate professional growth. It would position her as a peer rather than a subordinate. And it would mean she could pursue a relationship with Daniel without the complicated power dynamics of him being her boss. But it also meant change, leaving a role she'd mastered, stepping into uncertainty, being visible in a way she'd carefully avoided for 3 years. Can I think about it? Emma asked. Of course. Take all the time you need, Daniel paused. Though I should mention that if you do accept, HR would need to be informed about our relationship. There would be disclosure forms, oversight, potentially some office gossip. It won't be completely private. I figured. Emma thought about Rachel Morrison, the journalist who'd already picked up on the chemistry between them. How much gossip are we talking about? Moderate to significant, depending on how much people care about my personal life. Daniel looked uncomfortable. I've never dated anyone in the office before. This is new territory for both of us. Emma moved to the window, looking out at the city that suddenly felt full of possibility. Can I ask you something? Anything. If I hadn't won the lottery, if I was still just your secretary without any financial safety net, would you still be offering me this promotion? Daniel was quiet for a moment. Then he said, honestly? Probably not, because I'm a coward. And I wouldn't have had the catalyst of our conversation last night to make me confront what was happening between us. I would have just kept things the way they were, safe, professional, utterly unfulfilling but familiar. The honesty was brutal and refreshing in equal measure. So in a way, the lottery was good for both of us. The lottery was chaos that forced both of us to be honest about what we wanted. Daniel joined her at the window. Though your methodology was still questionable. Emma smiled. I'm never going to live that down, am I? Not for at least several years, possibly decades. But he was smiling too. So, will you consider the position? Yes. But Daniel, I need to be clear about something. I'm not taking it just because it makes dating you easier. If I accept this role, it's because I actually want the job. Because I think I can do it well, because it's the next step in my career, not because I'm following a man. Good. Daniel's expression was approving. That's exactly the answer I was hoping for. Ambivalence about the role would be a red flag. They stood there at the window, close but not touching, the whole office potentially watching. Emma felt the weight of decisions pressing down on her, about the job, about Daniel, about what to do with her lottery winnings, about who she wanted to be now that she had the freedom to choose. I should get to work, Emma said finally. You have a 9 o'clock with the Riverside team. I do. But Daniel didn't move. Emma, can I take you to dinner tonight? Somewhere nice, not a wine bar where we process complicated emotions. An actual date. Emma's heart soared. I'd like that. Good. I'll make reservations. He pulled out his phone, already shifting into planning mode. Do you like Italian? There's this place in Soho. Daniel. Emma touched his arm, stopping him. You don't have to plan every detail. Just pick somewhere and I'll be happy. He looked at her, something vulnerable in his expression. I want to do this right. He stopped, struggling. I want you to know I'm taking this seriously. Taking us seriously. I know. Emma squeezed his arm gently, then let go before the gesture became too intimate for the office. Now let me get to work before Jennifer starts spreading rumors about why we've been alone in your office with the door closed for 20 minutes. Too late for that, probably. But Daniel was smiling as Emma left his office. The rest of the morning passed in a blur of meetings and emails and phone calls. Emma fielded questions from board members, rescheduled conflicts, managed the usual controlled chaos of keeping Daniel's professional life running smoothly. But underneath it all, her mind churned with possibilities. Around 11, her phone buzzed with a call from Marcus Chen. "Emma, good news. The trust paperwork is complete. We can file your claim by the end of the week." Emma stepped into an empty conference room for privacy. "That fast? You were very decisive about what you wanted." That helped. She could hear Marcus typing. "Once the claim is filed, it takes approximately 2 to 4 weeks for the funds to be released. After that, you're officially a wealthy woman." Officially wealthy. Emma tested the words. They still felt foreign. "Marcus, can I ask you something?" "Of course." "How many lottery winners do you work with?" "Over my career, maybe 30 or 40. "Why? Do any of them keep their jobs after they win?" Marcus was quiet for a moment. "Some do initially. Most don't, long term. The money changes things, changes how they see themselves, how others see them, what they want from life. Work that felt meaningful before can start to feel like an obligation. Relationships get complicated. It's a major life transition. But some people make it work, keep the parts of their life they valued. The ones who do best are the ones who had a strong sense of identity before the money arrived, the ones who knew what mattered to them and didn't let the wealth redefine that." Marcus paused. "Why? Are you thinking about keeping your job?" "Maybe, in a different capacity." Emma thought about the promotion Daniel had offered, about moving into a role that would challenge her differently. "I'm figuring things out." "Good. Take your time. The money will wait." After Marcus hung up, Emma sat in the conference room for a few extra minutes, thinking. In 2 to 4 weeks, she'd have access to $22 million. She could travel the world, buy a house, invest in startups, fund causes she cared about, do literally anything. But what she wanted, she realized, was already here. She wanted the job that would push her to grow. She wanted the relationship with Daniel that was terrifying and exhilarating in equal measure. She wanted to figure out who Emma Carter was when she wasn't defined by her role as someone's assistant or by her bank account balance. Her phone buzzed. "Sophie. Sophie. How's it going? Has he kissed you yet?" "Emma. We're at work. There's no kissing at work." "Sophie. But he wants to kiss you at work, right?" "Emma. Probably. We're going on an actual date tonight." "Sophie. Finally. Wear something hot. Not work clothes. Something that says, 'I won the lottery and I'm a catch.'" "Emma. I don't own anything that says that." "Sophie. Then go shopping at lunch. You're a millionaire. Act like it." Emma stared at Sophie's text. She'd been so focused on keeping her financial situation secret that she hadn't considered what it might mean to actually use the money. Not in huge, dramatic ways. She wasn't ready for that, but in small ways, like buying a dress for a first date without checking her bank account balance first. The thought was simultaneously thrilling and terrifying. At lunch, instead of eating her usual salad at her desk, Emma slipped out to a boutique 3 blocks away. It was the kind of place she usually walked past with envious glances, where a single dress cost more than she'd normally spend on clothes in a month. Today, she walked in like she belonged there. 20 minutes later, she emerged with a bag containing a deep burgundy dress that was somehow both elegant and flirty, and a pair of shoes that would definitely hurt by the end of the night, but looked amazing. The total had been more than her weekly grocery budget used to be, and Emma had swiped her credit card without flinching. Small steps toward becoming someone who could accept that her life had changed. Back at the office, Jennifer caught her in the elevator. "Did you go shopping?" Emma clutched the bag defensively. "Maybe. For tonight?" Jennifer's eyes sparkled with knowing amusement. "How did you—" "Daniel asked me to recommend restaurants. He specifically wanted somewhere romantic but not ostentatious." Jennifer grinned. "I sent him to Il Gabbiano. It's perfect for first dates." Emma felt heat creep up her neck. "He told you it's a date." "He didn't have to. I've worked with him for 5 years. I've never seen him ask for restaurant recommendations that specified romantic. Usually, he just wants efficient. Jennifer's expression softened. For what it's worth, I think you're good for him. He's been different lately, more present, more human, and I suspect that's your influence. I don't know about that. I do. Everyone does. The whole office has noticed the change. Jennifer stepped off the elevator on her floor. Have fun tonight. And Emma, don't overthink it. Just enjoy the fact that you're going on a date with someone who clearly adores you. Emma carried those words with her through the rest of the afternoon. The office gradually emptied as people left for the day, until it was just Emma at her desk and Daniel in his office, both working later than necessary. At 6:30, Daniel emerged. I should go home and change. Reservations are at 8. Can I pick you up? I can meet you there. Emma, I'm taking you on a date. That means I pick you up. Give me your address. Emma did, feeling a flutter of nerves and excitement. Daniel getting her address, coming to her apartment, seeing the modest space she shared with Sophie, it all felt significant, real. I'll see you at 7:30, Daniel said. Then, checking that the office was empty, he added softly, You look beautiful, by the way. You've looked beautiful all day. I wanted to say it this morning, but didn't know if that was appropriate. Emma's breath caught. It's appropriate. And thank you. They stood there for a moment, suspended in possibility. Then Daniel stepped back, professional distance reasserting itself. 7:30. 7:30, Emma echoed. Emma went home and found Sophie in full excitement mode. She'd cleared the living room of clutter, lit candles, and queued up what she called power ballads for romantic transformation. You're being ridiculous, Emma said, but she was smiling. I'm being supportive. There's a difference. Sophie pointed at Emma's shopping bag. Show me what you bought. Emma pulled out the burgundy dress. Sophie gasped dramatically. That's perfect. That's I'm confident and successful, and also you're going to fall even more in love with me. Perfect. Sophie grabbed Emma's shoulders. You're really doing this. You're going on a date with Daniel Hartwell. I'm really doing this. And you told him about the lottery. And I told him about the lottery. And he's still interested. Apparently so. Sophie pulled her into a tight hug. I'm so proud of you for being brave, for taking the risk, for choosing happiness even when it's scary. Emma hugged back, feeling emotions swell in her chest. Thank you for pushing me, for listening to me freak out, for being happy for me even though my life is suddenly weird and complicated. Your life has always been weird and complicated. Now it's just also romantic and financially secure. Sophie pulled back. Now go get ready. You have an hour and you need to look like a woman who won the lottery and the guy. Emma showered, styled her hair, put on more makeup than usual, and slipped into the burgundy dress. It fit perfectly, skimmed her curves without being too tight, hit just above the knee, made her feel both comfortable and beautiful. The shoes were admittedly impractical, but worth it for the boost of confidence they provided. At 7:25, Emma's doorbell buzzed. Sophie answered it, and Emma heard her say, Daniel, come in. Emma's almost ready. Can I get you something to drink? Water, wine, a detailed lecture about what will happen if you hurt my best friend. Sophie! Emma emerged from her bedroom mortified. But Daniel was smiling. That warm, genuine smile that transformed his face. He wore dark jeans, a charcoal sweater, and a leather jacket that made him look less like a CEO and more like someone who might actually know how to have fun. You look incredible, he said, and the sincerity in his voice made Emma's heart flutter. So do you. Emma grabbed her purse and coat. Ready? Ready. Daniel offered his arm, and Emma took it, feeling the solid warmth of him. Sophie waved from the doorway as they left. Have fun. Don't do anything I wouldn't do, which leaves a lot of options. In the elevator, Daniel said, Your roommate is terrifying. She's protective. I respect that. The elevator reached the ground floor, and Daniel held the door for her. For the record, I have no intention of hurting you, but I appreciate having someone who'll threaten me if I do. A car was waiting, not a cab, but a sleek black sedan with a driver. Emma raised an eyebrow. Too much? Daniel asked, suddenly uncertain. No, just different from taking the subway. You've been taking the subway while secretly being a millionaire. I think we can allow ourselves some luxury tonight. The drive to Soho was comfortable, easy. They talked about inconsequential things. Sophie's dating disasters, Daniel's sister calling to complain about their mother, the latest office drama that didn't involve either of them. It felt natural, like they'd been doing this for years instead of navigating their first official date. Il Gabbiano was tucked on a quiet street, unassuming from the outside but elegant within. Exposed brick, soft lighting, tables spaced far enough apart for intimate conversation. The hostess greeted Daniel by name and led them to a corner table that felt private, despite the restaurant being pleasantly full. Jennifer recommended this place, Daniel said once they were seated. She promised it was romantic without being pretentious. Jennifer knows. Jennifer is terrifyingly observant, but she's also discreet. She won't tell anyone. Daniel studied his menu. Though I suspect most of the office has figured it out anyway, we're not exactly subtle. Emma thought about the closed-door meeting this morning, the way Daniel had looked at her, the fact that she'd worn a dress she'd never worn to work before. No, I suppose we're not. They ordered pasta for Emma, risotto for Daniel, a bottle of wine to share, and then they talked. Really talked in a way they'd never been able to at work. Daniel told her about growing up in Connecticut, about his father dying when he was 20, about building his company as much to prove something to himself as to honor his father's memory. Emma told him about her childhood in Ohio, about putting herself through college, about the fear of never being stable enough that had driven so many of her careful choices. So the lottery must feel significant, Daniel said, finally having security. It does, but it's also strange. I've spent my whole adult life making decisions based on what I could afford. And now affordability isn't a factor anymore, and I don't know who I am without that constraint. Emma swirled her wine. Does that make sense? Completely. When I sold my first company and suddenly had real money, I didn't know what to do with myself. I'd been driven by necessity for so long that having options felt paralyzing. Daniel reached across the table and took her hand, deliberately, publicly, claiming the gesture. But you'll figure it out. You're strategic. You'll evaluate your options, make informed decisions, build something meaningful. You have a lot of faith in me. I do. More than you have in yourself, probably. His thumb traced circles on her palm. Emma, can I ask you something? Always. What would you do with the money? If you could do anything without worrying about practicality or other people's opinions, what would make you happy? Emma considered the question seriously. I think I'd want to help people. Not in a flashy, build-a-hospital way, though that's nice too, but in smaller ways, funding scholarships for kids like I was, supporting organizations that help women advance in their careers, maybe even starting something myself. A consulting practice or non-profit that helps companies build better cultures, treat their people like humans instead of resources. Daniel's expression was soft. That's a beautiful vision. It's just a vision right now. I don't know if I have the courage to actually do it. You won the lottery and kept working to test whether your feelings were reciprocated. You absolutely have the courage. Daniel squeezed her hand. And for what it's worth, I think you should do it. Start something yourself. I could help. Not financially, you don't need that, but with connections, advice, whatever you need. Emma felt tears prick her eyes. You'd do that? Emma, I'd do a lot of things for you. Supporting your dreams is pretty low on the difficulty scale. He smiled. Besides, it's selfish. The more fulfilled you are, the happier you'll be. And your happiness matters to me. They finished dinner slowly, savoring both the food and the conversation. Daniel told her about the Riverside acquisition, about his concerns for the company's direction, about the pressure from the board to appear more human and relatable. Emma shared her nervousness about the business development position, about stepping into visibility after years of staying in the background. You'll be brilliant. Daniel said with absolute certainty. "And if anyone gives you trouble because of our relationship, they'll answer to me. That's very protective." "I'm learning." Daniel signaled for the check. "I never had anyone to be protective of before. It's new, but I think I like it." Outside, the November night had turned properly cold. Daniel shrugged off his leather jacket and draped it over Emma's shoulders without asking, and Emma found herself wrapped in his warmth and the scent of his cologne. "Thank you," she said softly. "You're welcome." Daniel offered his arm again, and they walked slowly back toward where the car was parked. "Can I tell you something?" "Please." "I was nervous tonight, about this date. About whether I'd be boring or awkward, or somehow mess this up before we even really started." He glanced at her. "But I haven't been nervous once since we sat down. It just felt easy, like we'd been doing this forever." "It did feel easy," Emma agreed. "Though you should know I was also nervous. I spent 20 minutes choosing this dress. It was worth the 20 minutes. Daniel stopped walking, turning to face her fully. They were on a quiet street, streetlights casting gentle shadows, the city humming distantly around them. "Emma, I know we said we'd take this slow, figure things out properly, but I need to tell you something." Emma's heart raced. "Okay, I'm falling in love with you. Maybe I have been for years and just didn't let myself acknowledge it. But I'm telling you now because I promised honesty, and that's the truth." His grey eyes were intense, vulnerable. "You don't have to say it back. I'm not expecting reciprocity on a specific timeline. I just needed you to know." Emma felt like her chest might burst. "Daniel, you don't have to. I love you too." The words tumbled out, urgent and true. "I've been falling for you for so long, I forgot what it felt like to not be halfway in love with you. And it's terrifying and wonderful, and I don't know how to do this, but I want to try. I want to try so badly." Daniel's expression transformed, relief and joy and something fierce. "Can I kiss you now, here on this street where anyone could see? Please." He cupped her face in his hands and kissed her, gentle at first, tentative, like he was discovering something precious, then deeper, more certain, his hands sliding into her hair while Emma gripped the front of his sweater and kissed him back with 3 years of suppressed wanting. When they finally pulled apart, both slightly breathless, Daniel rested his forehead against hers. "That was worth waiting 3 years for?" Emma laughed, giddy and overwhelmed. "We're doing this. We're actually doing this. We're doing this." Daniel kissed her again, softer this time. "No more tests, no more secrets. Just us, figuring it out together." "Together," Emma echoed, and the word felt like a promise. The car drove them back to Emma's apartment, and they sat close in the back seat, hands intertwined, occasionally stealing kisses like teenagers. When they arrived, Daniel walked her to her door. "I should let you get inside," he said reluctantly, "even though I don't want this night to end." "It doesn't have to end." Emma surprised herself with her boldness. "You could come in. Meet Sophie properly, have coffee, talk more." Daniel smiled. "I'd like that." Inside, Sophie took one look at their intertwined hands and grinned so widely her face threatened to split. "I take it the date went well?" "Exceptionally well," Daniel said, and Emma noticed he didn't let go of her hand even while greeting Sophie. They stayed up until midnight, drinking coffee and talking. Sophie told embarrassing stories about Emma's college years, while Emma protested weakly. Daniel shared stories about building his company, about the ridiculous mistakes he'd made early on. And through it all, Emma felt something settle in her chest, a certainty that this was right, that all the fear and uncertainty had been worth it to arrive here. When Daniel finally left, he kissed Emma goodnight at the door, a long, sweet kiss that promised more to come. "I'll see you tomorrow?" Emma asked. "You'll see me tomorrow, and the day after that, and the day after that." Daniel smiled. "I'm very consistent once I've made a decision." After he left, Emma leaned against the closed door, feeling dazed and happy. Sophie appeared with fresh champagne. "So, you won the lottery, got the promotion, and got the guy. Is this the part where we toast to your ridiculously perfect life? Emma took the champagne flute. It's not perfect. There are still complications, still things to figure out. But you're happy. I'm happy, Emma admitted. Terrified, but happy. That's the best kind of happy. Sophie raised her glass. To Emma Carter. Lottery winner, future business development executive, and girlfriend to a very lucky CEO. They clinked glasses, and Emma took a sip of champagne that tasted like celebration and new beginnings. Her phone buzzed. Daniel, thank you for tonight, for being brave enough to tell me the truth, even when you were scared, for giving us a chance, for being you. Emma, thank you for noticing when I change my shampoo, for defending me to journalists, for making me believe I'm capable of more than I give myself credit for. Daniel, always. Good night, Emma. I love you. Emma, I love you too. Good night. Emma set down her phone and looked at Sophie, who was watching her with undisguised affection. You did it, Sophie said softly. You took the risk. You were honest. And look what happened. I got lucky, Emma said. No, you were brave. There's a difference. Later, lying in bed, Emma thought about everything that had happened in the past week. She'd won the lottery. She'd tested Daniel and found something real. She'd been offered a promotion that would challenge her in new ways. She'd told the truth and discovered that honesty, however terrifying, was worth it. But more than any of that, she'd figured out what she wanted. Not just the money or the job or the relationship, but the courage to reach for things that scared her, the willingness to be vulnerable, the understanding that playing it safe was its own kind of risk, the risk of never knowing what might have been possible. Her phone buzzed one more time. Daniel again. Daniel. Sorry, one more thing. I forgot to tell you at dinner. About the business development position. There's no pressure to accept. If you want to stay as my assistant, we'll figure something else out. If you want to quit entirely and start your non-profit, I'll support that. If you want to travel the world for 6 months and figure out what you want, I'll be here when you get back. I'm not going anywhere. Emma's eyes filled with tears, happy tears, grateful tears. Emma, I'll take the position. Not because it makes dating you easier, though that's a nice bonus, but because I want to grow. I want to challenge myself. I want to build something meaningful, and I want to do it here, with you nearby, building things together. Daniel, then that's what we'll do. Together. Emma, together. Emma set down her phone and closed her eyes, feeling the weight of the past week lift. Tomorrow, she'd tell HR about her relationship with Daniel. She'd accept the promotion. She'd start the process of claiming her lottery winnings. She'd begin figuring out who Emma Carter was now. Not just the secretary, not just the lottery winner, but the woman who'd been brave enough to bet on herself and win. But tonight, she just savored this moment. The champagne buzz, the memory of Daniel's kiss, the certainty that she'd made the right choice by telling the truth. Outside her window, New York hummed with late-night energy. Millions of people living their lives, making their choices, taking their chances. And Emma was one of them now, no longer playing it safe, no longer hiding in the background. She was choosing happiness, choosing honesty, choosing love, and it felt like winning the lottery all over again. Epilogue. 6 months later. The spring sunshine poured through the windows of Emma's new office, a real office with a door and a view, and her name on a plaque that still made her do a double take every time she saw it. Emma Carter, Director of Organizational Development. It had been 6 months since that first date, since the honest conversation that had changed everything. 6 months of learning her new role, building programs to improve company culture, implementing the kind of systemic changes she'd always known were possible but never had the authority to create. 6 months of dating Daniel, sometimes messy, occasionally complicated, always worth it. The lottery money had come through as promised. Emma had invested most of it, donated a substantial portion to scholarships and women's advancement programs, and kept enough liquid to feel secure without being ostentatious. She still lived with Sophie, though they'd upgraded to a slightly bigger apartment. She still took the subway most days, though she'd splurged on cabs when it was raining. The money had changed things, but not as much as she'd feared. What had really changed was Emma herself. Her confidence, her willingness to take risks, her understanding that security didn't come from bank account balances, but from knowing herself and what she valued. A knock on her door pulled her from her thoughts. Daniel stood there, tie slightly askew, looking harried but happy. "Bad time?" he asked. "Never for you." Emma gestured him in. "What's wrong?" "Nothing's wrong. I just needed to see you." He closed the door and kissed her, still thrilling, still capable of making her heart race even after 6 months. "The Riverside acquisition finally closed. We're officially merged." "Daniel, that's amazing. Congratulations." "Couldn't have done it without your organizational development plan. The cultural integration strategy you designed is what convinced their board we could actually make this work." He pulled her close. "You're brilliant. You know that? You might have mentioned it once or twice." "Not enough. I should mention it daily." Daniel kissed her forehead. "Are we still on for dinner tonight?" "Absolutely. Sophie's staying at her boyfriend's place, so we have the apartment to ourselves." "Perfect." Daniel's expression turned slightly nervous. "Actually, I wanted to talk to you about something." Emma's stomach flipped. "That sounds ominous." "It's not ominous, it's just—" He ran a hand through his hair, that familiar gesture of uncertainty. "We've been together for 6 months. We're happy, right? Very happy. And this is working, us working together, dating, navigating all the complications? It's working beautifully." Emma tilted her head. "Daniel, where is this going?" He took a breath. "I was thinking maybe you should move in with me, or I could move in with you and Sophie if that's better, or we could get a place together, somewhere that's ours. I want to wake up next to you every morning. I want to come home to you every night. I want us to be more official, more permanent." Emma's heart soared. "You want to live together. I want to live together. If you want that too, no pressure. We can wait if—" Emma kissed him, cutting off his nervous rambling. "Yes, I want that too. Very much." Daniel's smile was incandescent. "Really?" "Really, though we should probably find a new place. Sophie's boyfriend is moving in with her anyway, and your apartment is way too minimalist for my book collection. We'll find somewhere perfect, somewhere with room for your books and my neurotic need for organized closets." Daniel kissed her again. "I love you, Emma Carter." "I love you too, Daniel Hartwell." They stood there in her office, holding each other, and Emma thought about how far she'd come. A year ago, she'd been Daniel's secretary, secretly nursing feelings she thought were impossible. 6 months ago, she'd won the lottery and decided to take a chance on honesty. Now she was the director of organizational development. She was dating the CEO. She was moving in with him. She was building the life she wanted instead of just managing everyone else's lives. It wasn't perfect. There were still complications, office politics, occasional boundary issues, people who thought she'd slept her way into her promotion despite her obvious qualifications. But Emma had learned to handle complications. She'd learned that perfection was overrated and that the messy, honest, imperfect reality was so much better than the safe, controlled fantasy she'd been living before. "I should get back to work," Daniel said reluctantly. "Board meeting in 20 minutes. Go, dazzle them with your corporate brilliance. Only if you promise to dazzle me with organizational development insights at dinner." "A deal." After Daniel left, Emma returned to her desk and pulled up her email. There was a message from a woman she'd met at a networking event, someone interested in starting a non-profit focused on workplace culture. Emma had been consulting on the side, helping people build the kind of organizations she'd always dreamed of working for. She was building something meaningful, something that mattered, and she'd done it by being brave enough to tell the truth, even when it was terrifying. Emma's phone buzzed. "Sophie. Sophie. Daniel just texted me asking for your ring size." "Emma. Emma, are you getting engaged?" "Emma. We're moving in together first, one step at a time, Sophie. But eventually you're getting engaged, right? Because I need to be maid of honor, and I've already been planning your wedding for 6 months. Emma, you're ridiculous. Sophie, you love me anyway. Also, you still owe me wine for being right about everything. Emma, I owe you so much more than wine. Thank you for everything. Sophie, that's what best friends are for. Now go be brilliant and in love. I'll be here planning your future wedding. Emma smiled, set down her phone, and got back to work. Outside her window, spring was transforming the city. Trees budding, people shedding their winter coats, everything feeling possible and new. And Emma Carter, lottery winner, organizational development director, girlfriend to a formerly emotionally unavailable CEO, felt like the luckiest person in New York. Not because of the money, though, that certainly helped. Not because of the promotion, though she loved her job, but because she'd learned that sometimes the biggest risk was playing it safe. Sometimes the real lottery was having the courage to reach for what you wanted, even when you were terrified it might not reach back. She'd taken that chance. She'd told the truth. She'd bet on herself and on love. And she'd won everything that mattered.